Hello everybody, welcome to a very unique video. I usually don't make React content, and I also don't intend to do React content too much in the future, but I think this video definitely, it warrants it, right? Because I think it just is like a real, I guess, important thing to talk about in like the video game sphere is the way people judge games and how people like, I don't know, especially like the Twitch culture and the streaming culture kind of emphasizes the wrong things, in my opinion, about certain games. And we're going to look at this video and react to it. First, I want to preface this. I think Asmongold is one of the smartest people I know on Twitch. He is very intelligent, kind of bad at games sometimes, which require more than intelligence. But actually, I don't know if he's holding himself back or if it's a bit sometimes, but he's just like kind of not that great at some games, especially when it comes to mechanics and stuff like that. Like not World of Warcraft mechanics, but literally like, you know, I don't know, just watch him play Elden Ring DLC and you know, you will immediately know what I mean. Yeah, that's what I want to preface. So that's what I think of Asmongold, right? He's a intelligent, nice guy that has often very good takes on things. But then, like every human being on planet Earth, he seems to have some random brain fart and completely forget that he has brain cells that should be working. Because he's like probably too bad to notice. I don't know. That's what the only thing I can assume is that he is just not good enough at certain games or realizes he doesn't know enough about them to actually judge them. Which is why we're going to watch the video. And I usually don't do this as my first reaction content ever. I did upload thousands of videos. Just like for fun as archiving purposes and just like to share, right? But this one is definitely more of an opinion piece at the start, and later we're just going to play casually the game as always. A game, but in this case, the game Zenless on Zero. And yeah, let's go. Let's go. First reaction video live on stream here. I must preface this by saying I watched the video which inspired me to react to it, because I think both the video he's reacting to, obviously it's a react video of him too, and the title you might say, why is it all caps? Because I just took the style his editor used. He doesn't edit them himself, it's like his editor, the style he used, and yeah. And also I must say I watch Asmongold every now and then on topics I care about. I don't care about general React content. I think he reacts to a lot of shit I don't give a fuck about. So I'm not like a regular watcher of him, but you know, from time to time I do enjoy you know, watching him, and I do think he's a great human being. And it's kind of unfortunate that sometimes he has these moments where just his opinion is kind of not valid, but very skewed in a wrong way, and he has a big audience. So I think like it's kind of important to, you know, put it maybe in the light of maybe another person, and you can choose whatever side you want in the end, or you can choose your own opinion, obviously, and there is no absolute right or wrong. So his opinions are valid, mine will be valid, but I will show you why I think his opinions might sometimes be very, very wrong from my perspective. So let's start.
Zenless Zone Zero. A lot of people have been kind of negative about the game. I figured out.
Okay, he starts off by saying a lot of people are kind of negative. I'm not going to react to every sentence, just to start, kind of negative. So that's an interesting way to put it. The kind of is kind of, you know, like saying, hey, I don't want to take an absolute stance on it. So it's like kind of saying like, yeah, kind of negative, right? It's like most people are being very negative about it. And a few are like, you know, still base. And he's one of the people I think is being not kind of negative about it. But he will argue he gives it a 6 out of 10, which is a good score, which we will come back to.
I watched a short video about it. Game is ass.
So I want to talk about the real reason why people are not satisfied with Zenless Zone Zero. Of course, we're showing my opinion on the game. So let's get straight to the point. The first real reason why people are not satisfied with the game is like the game is too easy for them.
Okay, so we talked about difficulty in gacha games at length. So I come from a unique perspective. I think that's not to be braggadocious or anything. I think I'm an above average gamer in literally every game I ever played in my life. And I don't find games very challenging for the most part. I find most games very casually enjoyable. And only very few things I would consider slightly challenging. For example, the final boss in the Elden Ring DLC, if you don't cheese him with an OP build. and don't summon whatever, it can be quite challenging. Everything else about the Elden Ring DLC, in my opinion, was very easy. The base game of Elden Ring was also very easy. So, you know, it's just like, that's my perspective. So first of all, that's my perspective. So for me, every game is basically easy. So if you say a game is not hard enough, for me, that doesn't really matter because most games are easy for me. So it doesn't matter for me, right? So from my perspective, everything's easy. So that's a kind of weird perspective, but now I'm going to go into why it does matter for everyone, no matter how hard the game is. So these people, by the way, just to preface this, I don't know how much they exactly played. I think most of them like day 1, day 2 or something into the game. They played for a couple of hours, maybe 10, 20 hours, I don't know. And one of the reasons why they will be talking about the difficulty here is because they think it is important for a game to challenge you and kill you right away for you to enjoy it. Which you can highly argue is not the case, and we'll see later a few examples of that. But why I think it's very, very bad to ask for challenge in a pay-to-win game, a gacha game, because you know what's going to happen. Bad players are going to have to spend money, good players will get through maybe like that, but still it will always feel like you are being pushed to spend money. And then there is another reason why it's bad in this game. And we'll talk about that. It's basically how the combat system works. And I must admit, both these people seem to be very, very bad at this game. So both the person he's reacting to, I don't even know what his name is, and Asmongold are not good at this game in any way. Because you don't have to be, but the point is they are not good. And we're going to come to that a bit later. So let's listen to what Asmongold has to say.
All you have to do is left click. Some people aren't feeling the rewards from the gameplay, but I actually want to preface this, and I want to say that the game for me is kind of enjoyable. I will probably rate it a 6 out of 10, maybe a 6.5.
That was my number 2 for it.
Okay, so here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, 6 out of 10. The other thing is like with Wuthering Waves,
Okay, so it's edited. Obviously, this video is very edited. So first of all, that's why obviously I have to say it's edited by its editor. So it might be kind of misrepresenting Asmongold's points in a way. So I don't know what the complete context is of what he's saying because it's like edited. But he chose to, or his editor chose to upload this in this way. So I'm going to react to what he's saying like this, right? He might say something else in between the lines. I can hear that. I didn't watch the stream. So I just know what he's saying in this video. So let's start off with people saying you can just button mash to win. I'm going to say it, you can play Hades and just press one button and you're going to win. You can play Dark Souls and just press one button, and dodge obviously, in that game. And then we're going to come back to that later. And you can win. So just button mashing and winning doesn't mean a combat system is bad. Devil May Cry, for example, is a great example. You can always do the same attacks over and over and over again and win, or you can go for SSS ranks and try to be stylish and win. So there's like a different approach to video game design. There's the be stylish, and focus on like getting score. And then there's the focus on difficulty by preventing the player from dying, right? And then there's the other aspect that's literally, literally you want to maybe kill something fast, which has nothing to do with difficulty, but is about efficiency. And that's why I think Asmongold it's kind of weird he doesn't get it, because just mashing the attack button in Zenless Zone Zero is so boring and slow, because the game is not meant to revolve around that. In many cases, it's literally better to not stun knock a single enemy like he's doing right here, but to actually just let him attack and parry him to instantly get him stunned and then get the combos rolling, right? So I think the core problem these two people have with the game, and I think many people have, is that the game has a very complex combat system. But I'm going to delve into that a bit later. But let's talk about this 6 out of 10 here. So Asmongold, I'm just going to react to what they're saying right now, right? So they say it's like a one button press game, and the reality is basically you can play the game very efficiently by not just pressing one button, and you're going to be way faster, way faster. You're going to take so long to kill things if you actually don't. If you actually don't play it correctly, you're just going to get really sloggy and boring. And the reason why you don't get punished for it beyond maybe the time limit later is because you don't die. So I guess the reason why you might do it is because you're bad and just want to button mash. But yeah, they gave it a 6 out of 10. Just a little context, 6 out of 10 in video games is terrible. If something gets a 6 out of 10, most people will consider it to be absolute garbage. And anything below a 6 is basically an utter failure. It's like the worst games in existence, right? Everything below 6 is fucking terrible, and 6 is borderline shit, right? So let's be real. 6 is not a good score. 6 is a good score on a scale that has any logic between 1 and 10, but video games are definitely historically have never been rated on a real 1 to 10 scale, right? You almost see never something below a 6. You can look at how little you get 1, 2s, 3s, 4s. They're so seldom there. 5 is already super rare. So having a 6 for a video game is a shit score. Let's preface that, right? Everyone telling you otherwise is being delusional or using an arbitrary scale which has nothing to do with how everyone else rates games. So giving something a 6 is basically, it's borderline shit, but you can play it if you want to. Okay? It's not a good game like he's going to say later.
Waves just got released, and it was already like, because people have a direct recent frame of reference to compare this to. So
okay, so he's comparing it to Wuthering Waves. Now I must admit, Wuthering Waves I don't give a shit about because I just recently quit Genshin, and Wuthering Waves literally just looks for me to be a different version of Genshin. Might be the better version, I have no idea, I didn't play it. But for me, Wuthering Waves, the art style wasn't attractive, and I did not want another open world exploration type game. So for me, this type, and that's a very important point we're going to make, of game was not interesting to me personally. So I was not looking for that. So I don't think ZZZ wants to be that type of game, and that's, I think, a big issue we're going to see in this discussion. But yeah, that's why I just have to say I didn't play Wuthering Waves, and he immediately compares it, which is fair, I guess, because they came out recently, but it's like literally like comparing, I don't know, Hades to Elden Ring, right? Oh, they came out about the same time frame. Well, Elden Ring had such a big, open, epic world, and Hades was just a roguelike with rooms. How shit must Hades be, right? So, obviously a flawed comparison. They're comparison apples to apples. Just because both are gacha games made by a company that had made similar games in the past doesn't mean they have to, right? This game definitely wants to be a different game than Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact, right? Wuthering Waves, from what I can tell at least. It seems to be an open world exploration game from all the gameplay I've seen. I've seen gameplay, right, but I didn't play a second myself, so. And obviously, having played Wuthering Waves, that might change how I talk about Wuthering Waves, because I could argue in detail there, but since I have literally zero idea about that game, you know, I'm literally not going to be able to say anything about it. So I'm literally, all I can tell you is that I didn't play it, and some arguments in the comparison might be valid, right? I'm just going to talk about what Zenless Zone Zero is from a game design perspective in its current state, and not about Wuthering Waves.
Anybody who's looking for like a combat game that's like responsive and shit, this game just isn't it, bro. It's just not it.
So now Asmongold says the game is not responsive. Now I'm like, okay, that's bullshit, right? Obviously the game has no significant input lag. You're in complete control of your actions. The animations, especially the ultimate animations, are like, if you use an elemental burst in Genshin Impact, I have to say, being my opinion, right? You might be saying, hey, you're Hoyoverse, says MiHoYo, a fanboy. No, I quit Genshin, and I think very little of MiHoYo in its term of long-term support of games. They never add in more than 60 FPS. They don't give a shit about new technologies. Every new game from them fixes problems that are in Genshin, but they don't fix it in Genshin. So I think, and also Genshin has a lot of problems with like convoluted exploration design. They came too long story cutscenes. So I'm not a fanboy, right? I'm not a fanboy. Sarah can suck my dick with this fucking boring auto combat, which we'll come to later because it's going to be mentioned in this video. So yeah, we're gonna talk about those. So I'm not a fanboy. Let's preface it like that, right? So I don't give a shit about who makes what. Is it good? Is it bad? That's what I care about. And I mean, obviously, nothing is good and bad for everyone equally because everything's subjective. But we're gonna try to be as quote unquote objective about the game, and you know. So first of all, he says it's unresponsive. That's complete bullshit. And like a few moments later, he will say it's complete bullshit. But he's gonna try to make it sound like it makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense, right? There's no unresponsiveness whatsoever in the game. Absolute nonsense.
I'm generous, but I want to say that the first like 20 levels of the game aren't very enjoyable until you actually get to the new modes and try some end game mode, and it becomes a little more challenging the more you play it. And I think that if the game is going to be always casual like that, it's going to only like get a very, very, very niche audience, and it will probably be my first gacha game that I play on mobile.
Okay, so let's just first start. There's a lot to unpack here. So the first 20 levels, yes, they are not the most omega enjoyable part about the game. And I'm going to tell you why that is. The game has a substantial amount of complexity in the background of the combat system, and it also plays substantially differently than you would expect from Genshin and whatever, right? It is a very different game approach to combat system design. It is the same idea, which is why a lot of people are being stupid when Transistor came out, one of the games Supergiant Games made in the past. And people came from Bastion and then they saw Transistor, so they assumed it's going to play, like an action game. But Transistor had one of the most unique and I think was never replicated to this day combat systems. You can see a bunch of reviewers and players just not getting the combat system. They were shit at it. They didn't understand the combat system. So there was something new. And since there was a way to avoid the new stuff, people just mashed buttons. That's literally like playing Street Fighter and saying, hey, there are a bunch of combos, but I can win just by punching the enemy in the face, right? On easy mode or whatever. So you're like, oh yeah, that works, right? So I don't need my special moves or nothing. So, you can play any game in a dumb way. You can play World of Warcraft and you can just use one spell instead of a rotation or whatever, and you can probably level the entire game, right? So kind of weird argument, definitely because the combat system is very, very complex in the background, and the controls require you to learn some new mechanics, which make it way faster and more enjoyable. So the main two core mechanics the game has is a very, very cool dodge and parry mechanic, right? It's not like in Genshin where you just dodge, spam, dodge, spam, dodge, spam. But here there's literally like the dodge slow motion with counter attacks. You get like the parries, and then you have like the parry limited parry resources. Some enemies need to be parried multiple times. Some needs to be, for example, there's an enemy that needs to be dodged, parried. So there's like a rhythm to it. It's a bit like Sekiro, just like not as difficult, which is why people are probably not going to bother to get good. But I'm going to talk about that. But still, it's very different, right? And then he says in the video, not Asmongold, the guy in the video says, most players will not play the game because it's too casual. Okay, I'm going to complete shit on that take because Genshin Impact, Nikke, Honkai Star Rail. Okay, I'm just gonna name gacha games I played or I'm playing. Okay, so these games have zero. I'm literally saying it, zero challenge whatsoever. Like they're so easy, right? You can literally face roll the entire game of Genshin. I mean, bar maybe the Abyss, but he's talking about the majority of the game. So the majority of the game is completely easy. Star Rail, it's an auto game. I don't give a shit if there are modes where you need to play yourself. The majority of the gameplay is auto. Skill requirement 0. Right? Gameplay, quote unquote, 0, right? It's completely auto. It is the most brain dead shit. So, and does it retain its audience? I have no idea. But then I know a game that's very successful that also has mostly 0 gameplay. Nikke, right? Nikke also has 0 gameplay. So I don't know what this argument is. Literally, the common denominator is the worst player, and you have to cater to him, and you just have to keep the other people entertained and with something, right? And I think in the gacha games, a lot of people just care about cute characters and progression and not really challenged. So I think like maybe they're playing the wrong genre or something. I have no idea. But definitely, I don't think the argument holds up at all, like from my experience, right? The hard games tend to be dropped easier than not that hard games. Nobody rage quits an easy game, right? You might quit out of boredom, but usually these games are designed to give you like carrots, which are not related to skill. So yeah, a dumb argument, honestly.
Do not enjoy gacha games on mobile, but I think this is...
I've never played one of these games on mobile other than
No,
Honkai Star Rail to do my dailies. Other than that, no.
Okay, here, first of all, he says he wants to play it on mobile. It's the first... If you don't play Genshin on mobile, why would you play this on mobile? This game actually is literally parry timings, dodge timings. It revolves around a very reactive playstyle compared to Genshin. Genshin is a proactive game, a playstyle for the most part, right? You can dodge, but first of all, why is it proactive? You have certain rotations which can literally stun lock enemies, which can insta-kill enemies. which can, pull them together, lift them up, CC them, whatever, right? So there's a very proactive playstyle, and it's bolstered by a main focus on healing characters. If you have healing characters in the game or healing whatsoever, and the healing by far out heals the average damage you take, the game becomes instantly a non-reactive game. You can just face roll almost everything in Genshin just by having a healer in your team. Or a shield or whatever for that matter, right? You can proactively defend without having to reactively defend for against the majority of attacks in the game. The argument that he's making here, that you want to play it on mobile, is kind of stupid, because literally Genshin is way better to be played on mobile, and also Honkai Star Rail especially, right? And also, so many gacha games have auto mode, so I think these players either, Asmo obviously is going to bring up Star Rail, but the other player maybe never played a gacha game, because most gacha games are actually literally made for mobile, so you don't even have complex inputs like in the 3D world. So kind of weird. Maybe he's just a very, very inexperienced gacha player in the broad genre and just is focused on the action gacha genre. I have no idea, right? But then now here, Asmongold says, I do my dailies in Honkai Star Rail on mobile. Oh, you do? That's interesting. So would you say that Honkai Star Rail's auto system is so fucking boring that you literally just press it and you don't even watch the gameplay while you do your stories? You just press, here, auto, auto, auto. Oh, that's really weird, because it kind of sounds like what I hate to do in video games. It's literally not play them, but watch them. But Asmongold seems to enjoy that, right? Asmongold's going to talk about a challenge in a video game where he plays Honkai Star Rail that has like one of the most egregious auto modes in video game history. And literally has zero skill requirement once you get it. So, obviously there is like late game content you have to play yourself, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the early game experience. We're talking about people that haven't played a few days of this game. So, not in like hours, but literally in, time per day played time. I don't know, maybe they've played a couple of hours or so, like maybe 20 hours, 40, maybe even, but not more, right? I think Asmo definitely more, like maybe 20, but I have no idea. So I don't know how much he played. I just know he's early on in, because, yeah. But yeah, see, he plays Honkai Star Rail, so that tells me already a lot about Asmongold.
Like, the reason why the game isn't responsive, no, the game is very responsive. It plays very well, right? Like, it's not like there are no bugs really in the game, at least that I've encountered. All of the intangible things like that are pretty much good. The problem with the game is that it's just less than a lot of other games.
So, but classic Asmongold says something completely wrong, acknowledges it's completely wrong, and then tries to argue why it is right he said it with an argument that's completely unrelated to what he said. So he says it's unresponsive, and now he's saying it's less than other games. What does unresponsiveness have to do with less than other games? Let's find out. What is he going to say?
The combat is less than other games. The world is less than other games.
Okay, so he's not gonna he's just not gonna elaborate. He literally says something wrong, acknowledges it's wrong, but tries to argue why it's right by talking about random stuff. Okay, well, let's just talk about these 3 points here.
The problem with the game is that it's just less than a lot of other games. The combat is less than other games. The world is less than other games. The characters are, I think, less than other games. It's just
okay. I'm even going to go point by point here, okay?
good. The problem with the game is that it's just less than a lot of other games. The combat is less than other games.
Okay. The combat is less than other games. That's, first of all, he doesn't give any reasoning for that. Obviously, he's going to have some arguments, but he doesn't. So let's just take it for a face value. Is the combat less than other games in Zenless 0? No, right? It is way better than Genshin from a pure design perspective, because it has literally proactive and reactive defense mechanics, mostly reactive ones. So like having active focus on active dodging and parrying definitely adds a lot of like nuance to the gameplay style and can enable very difficult, by the way, very difficult content without feeling bad. Genshin has a real problem with that. Genshin, if you make it difficult, it's gonna feel bad pretty quick, because it's like just more of a stat check often, right? Because Genshin only has that one dodge, and the one dodge doesn't, you know, yes, it can be skillful, but it doesn't allow for a lot of variety in combos. But as soon as you have a duality, like a binary system basically, you can literally add so much nuance, right? If you can only go dodge, 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 right? You have only have dodge, right? But if you have dodge, parry, 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 dodge, parry, pot, dodge, parry, right? So you can already use so much more just by having dodge and parry in the game, right? Just having these, you can bring a lot of variety to defense. So I think already that is fucking dumb, right? Arguing that the game doesn't have a lot of depth. You can look, and the reason why they are arguing like that is because neither Asmongold nor the other guy, I think, and the other guy I don't know too much, but Asmongold for sure, they did not look at how the combat system works. They're playing it in like Wuthering Waves and Genshin, which is not how the game is intended to be played, right? The game is literally meant to be played in its own style, with a very, very much a focus on reactive countering to then proactively react, right? You usually initiate by being defensive. It's more like a little bit like, I think it's not Sekiro, you usually attack and then you have to become defensive, right? So you can do this too, obviously, in this game, but usually it revolves a little bit around you also about getting the openings by starting with a good parry or whatever. So I think missing this crucial element of the gameplay is one thing, and then obviously you have all the details and how, like, for example, you have an SS character, Soldier 11, where you have to literally press the attack button with a certain timing to do optimal damage, right? You have to do that. You don't have to do it to win, maybe, but if you want to be efficient, so there's like even timing in attacks. You have like hold attacks, you have like, you know, a little bit of rhythm in there, and then obviously you have like very, very interesting ways you can do rotations by using the certain characters in a certain order, by using their like, you know, their quick attacks, whatever they're called. No, not quick attacks. I'm bad with the names, right? We literally the attack when you stun the enemy and you can go in, right? You can do different rotations because they apply elements in between, and then the elements can react with each other. Like you can override them, so you may want to have a different order. And then there's a lot of background passives and stuff like that coming into that pretty active combat system to do a lot of optimization in the background. So is the combat less than other games? Heck no. Look at fucking Elden Ring. Elden Ring is literally dodging or blocking and attacking. And it doesn't matter if you have a heavy attack, a charge heavy attack, or a jump attack, whatever. It is literally a boring one thingy attack, right? It is attacking and rolling. It's not very complex. And you could see if you would just take it for even if you would take it for face value and say that, yeah, just like, you know, you just attack. In this game, you don't even do the abilities or whatever. You could just argue that you literally have the characters that are like weapons with different ashes of war. You could imagine that. And then already you have the same complexity. Then you obviously, sure, you have a shitty, you know, you have all the faith stuff and all these cheese spells or whatever. But the majority of like Souls gameplay, if you just want to play it like quote unquote normally, like a really normal melee character that doesn't rely on shields or whatever, it's usually just like dodging and attacking, right? So super simple. Definitely not less, right? And then there is the difference between, and we talked about that in Elden Ring, the difference between what the player can do and what he has to do to win and what the enemies can do. And this game, Zenless Zero, has a really, really, really great combat system for challenging gameplay. Because the parry and dodge system is an integral design part of it. And the stun mechanic basically opens up these moments of now you can efficiently DPS the enemy. Before that, you have to play more reactively and try to stun them. And then you can scale the damage up really, really high because you can literally avoid all damage in game. Unlike Genshin, where there's a lot of chip damage and there are a lot of damage sources, yeah, sure, you can play like no hit in a way, but it's usually not designed around that, right? But this game has a tell for every single attack. No attack is really bullshit. I mean, maybe there are some, but in all the attacks I know so far seem to be very dodgeable or reactable, and it is very intent about that, right? And so far there also is no healer in the game. Maybe there is later on, I don't know. But I think not having healers or a significant amount of healing is very good for the game, because it literally gives, like, especially in the roguelite modes or longer modes, it gives like your HP meaning. And I think that's also a part that Asmongold is kind of missing, is that the game has a roguelite mode later on, where literally you can where you have a HP bar that is meant to be managed over multiple fights, right? So you don't recover HP every fight. So that is kind of why I don't think the combat is lesser at all. It's very, very, very nuanced, very well made. And you're going to see it today. We're going to play it today. You're going to see my gameplays where we're going to look a bit different than theirs, just because I literally use the parry and dodge, right? I mean, obviously, we're going to do the same things. But also, then the characters are not built optimally for rotations and whatever. So yeah, I think like most people, I would say, don't understand the combat system very well. And it's going to take some time until really to appreciate it more. But I think the base is fantastic. I think it's one of the best real-time combat systems I've played so far. And saying anything else just honestly makes you look like like kind of incompetent, right? I have no idea how good Wuthering Waves combat system. It might be one of the best ever made. I have no idea, like I said, but definitely this one is also among the best ever made. So for sure, very, very, very good combat system, and definitely not less. Yeah, definitely not less. I'm sorry, Asmongold, you're completely wrong. And yeah, let's go for the second point here.
The world is less than other games.
Okay, the world is less than other games. What do you mean? You mean it's not an open world game? Is it less because of that? Is it less because of the way you can interact with it? Maybe the way you can't jump? But then we're in Star Rail, right? He's playing Star Rail. He's gonna say this game is worse than the Star Rail later. So I'm just thinking, right? He can only mean it's not an open world game, right? And that you maybe can't like run around and jump and whatever. That's the only thing I can see, right? And I'm sorry, Asmongold, the game does not want to be that. And if you think of a game not having a big, expensive open world as a worse game, then that's your personal preference, which is perfectly fine. But then again, there's so many good games. For example, let's take Baba as your puzzle game, right? Doesn't have a big open world. This is less of a game than, for example, the Tails Principle. Also not 3D graphics, but 2D. Is it worse because it doesn't look as good as, quote-unquote, look as good as Tails Principle? I don't know. Okay, maybe I should take games that people actually know mainstream while. But yeah, obviously just having an open world doesn't make a better game. I think that's something a lot of people since Breath of the Wild seem to be confounding. I think Breath of the Wild is a good open world game. I think the non-open world section, the dungeons, should definitely be themed after the environment and should have more classical Zelda elements to them, in my opinion, to them to be fun. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people also are on the boat that old Zelda games are not Breath of the Wild. They don't want to be, right? So I think there is a space for old Zelda games, which are not big. I mean, some of them are tried bigger open, quote-unquote, opener worlds. But there are a lot of ones that were like more, intricate designed worlds and not like really vast open plains. And I think that both of them have their value. But I definitely think in an ideal world, you would have a complexity of a classic Zelda map on the scale of Breath of the Wild, right? But that is not possible from a man-time perspective. I think that is more like a development problem. But in an ideal world, the world of Zelda would be chock full of details everywhere, like in a classic Zelda game. And I think since we're humans with limited time, literally having these compact experiences can have big advantages. So I don't think if you compare A Link to the Past, or I don't know, A Link's Awakening or whatever, if you compare these to Breath of the Wild, or even Wind Waker to Breath of the Wild, I think you can actually see that having less, quote-unquote, of a world in scope doesn't mean it's a worse game. It's just different types of game, right? Nobody's going to play Doom Eternal and complain it doesn't have an open world like Far Cry, right? So I think Asmongold, if he means that, it's completely wrong. If he means stuff like lore or like world building and whatever, he's also completely wrong, because this game literally has the same amount of world building and lore in it than I would say Star Rail and Genshin, if not even more, right? The world is very unique and well built. So a very unique also theme and art style. So no idea what the fuck he's talking about if he doesn't talk about the size of the world, but then he's just literally comparing apples to bananas, which might be great for him personally. When I also said, right, if you're looking for an open world exploration game, then ZZZ is not for you, because it's not that. It's not trying to be, right? It's literally not trying to be Wuthering Waves or Genshin Impact. So calling it less is kind of stupid. It's different. It doesn't try to be it. You could say it is less from his perspective, but I don't think that's being useful to anyone. I'm not gonna go and play Nikkei and say, hey, Nikkei's world is less than World of Warcraft. Yeah, duh. It's not an open world MMO. It's literally, a unique, I guess in a way, gacha game on a mobile device, which doesn't try to be World of Warcraft, right? So I think, Asmongold, you're completely wrong here. And it's also like comparing, for example, in shooters, we have the same discussion about, a lot of people like classical multiplayer in Call of Duty, and then there's the Battle Royale genre, and they're so different, right? You could say, yeah, sure, classical multiplayer in Call of Duty is less than a Battle Royale, but it has different pacing, different upsides, different downsides, especially in Age of Roguelite. This game, by the way, has roguelite elements to it, like significant roguelite elements. as in one mode especially, which is I don't know if that's supposed to be the late game mode or not, but definitely it has a weekly mode that revolves around roguelite design, which in my opinion immediately makes other parts you're going to see make sense. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to try to be very, very deep in my answers because Asmongold, I don't know how deep he was in the non-cut version, but I really want to make this very, very clear that I'm where I'm coming from, because I'm this might be the only time you're going to hear my perspective. So I don't think that argument holds up unless you're looking for an open world game where that definitely isn't it, but it doesn't try to be. So it's kind of, I'm not going to buy, Renault Clio, and I'm going to try to race the, the F1 championships, right? So I don't know. Kind of weird. Okay, I not like this is a Renault Clio, but it's it's not trying to be the same, right? You can either argue it's a F1 car or not, depending on what you want. And for me, that's a plus. I don't want a fucking big, expensive open world full of shit, walking, boring, nothing. Just like, I'm sorry, I know that Genshin is full of stuff, and I like Genshin too, but at the moment, I don't want that. I just want a combat-focused game, especially on a daily basis. I think Genshin holds up really well if you just play the story and everything, but once you start doing the dailies, all the additional loading screens, the additional travel time to the locations, you walk somewhere, you kill everything in literally a nanosecond with zero challenge whatsoever for your dailies, and you're more walking and loading, right? So I think having a design that is not like that is actually really good. Also, Star Rail, if you do the simulated universe, the walking, you walk, do nothing with auto, walk, do nothing with auto, walk, do nothing with auto. It's a terrible way of doing an auto system. Honkai Star Rail would have been so much better if you could literally just full auto stuff and just like not have to walk in between, honestly. I think the walking in between devalues the auto experience. And if you didn't have auto, I think it would have been a better game for me, because then it would have made sense to be there, right? And walk, fight, that's perfectly fine. But literally walk, do nothing is a terrible game design from my perspective. But maybe I'm not casual enough. Because he's going to argue that people that are going to like this game are casual, but I will heavily disagree with that. Because maybe that's because I'm kind of okay at all other games that I initially never find a game really challenging, and I would say every game for me is casual. So I'm coming from a very different perspective, maybe. But yeah, let's see. For me, Elden Ring is super casual, right? I can play Elden Ring just like casually, spacing out and like.
The characters are, I think, less than other games. It's just like this game.
Okay, the characters are less than other games. For me, it's like I have question marks in my head when he says that. Doesn't he like the style? Okay, fair point. You don't like this aesthetic. I think Withering Waves looks like shit. Like shit, not objectively looks okay, but it looks like boring, edgy Genshin, right? It doesn't trigger anything, but that's just my subjective opinion. So I'm never going to say, don't try Withering Waves because it looks like boring, edgy Genshin. You can see that yourself. I don't need this opinion, right? I want to know why he thinks the characters are less. Because from a design perspective, from how the backgrounds work, I think he doesn't even know, they're very well made. And visually, obviously, they're also very well made. They're well animated. They have cool cloth physics. Everything just looks nice, right? So if you don't like the art style, that's perfectly fine. We're talking to someone that plays World of Warcraft, which is honestly one of the most ugliest games when it comes to character armor design. I think it's just like most of them just like horrendous and like really weird Power Rangers stuff, right? But I didn't see the newer ones, so maybe there are some cool ones, right? There's some cool stuff, but it's kind of very, very different aesthetic. And just like maybe I also played a lot of Warcraft in my youth, and some of them look cool, but most of them honestly I think didn't look cool. So it's just like a personal preference, obviously, because this is super subjective. But I still think if that's the argument, you should definitely say I don't like the art style of the characters. I think it's well made, but I don't like it. That would be a fair point, right? Because just from a craftsmanship perspective, you can argue also the main character in this one, especially compared to Genshin and Star Rail, is by far the female one is by far the best main character they ever made. It's such a nice main character for me personally, but just from an interesting, like how interesting perspective is, like from a visual perspective. Okay, so no idea what the fuck he's talking about. If he's talking about the gameplay, he's also wrong. The characters are definitely not less than in Genshin Impact. They're definitely equal or very likely more complex because they have more like passives and more actives than in Genshin. So no idea what the fuck he's talking about. But yeah.
Game would have been great if it came out right after Honkai Impact 3rd.
No, he said the game would have been great if it came right out after Honkai Impact 3rd, which is the game I think Hoyoverse did before Genshin Impact. So this is obviously something you're going to see. He's going to often hinge on this. It's not the same type of game. So I think this is I think maybe this is even the biggest flaw in his entire logic, is that he's trying to map this game to Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact types of games, which are not the same types of games when it comes to core game design, right? The combat systems are similar to some degree, but the open world design of both other games and the non-targeted open world design of this game, which is quintessential for good roguelite mode, don't get me wrong, right? It's so important to have it in there. I think he's like completely missing the point of this game. So it's not trying to be an open world game. So I think he's always like doing the same argument here.
In like 2018 or 19. But compared to the market now, with like games like Genshin, Star Rail, you've got that Azure Permilia game coming out.
Yeah, let's talk about games that aren't even out yet. Oh, by the way, I did talk about recently, since I also played the game off stream, right? There are like the pets that walk around with you. I don't know if you can see one here. The pets that walk around with you, there's a gacha system attached to them. And I wasn't sure if it's going to be like paid or not. And I think this is one of the biggest Giga Chat things Hoyoverse has done. It's entirely, quote unquote, entirely free. You can buy in the Battle Pass, you can get like 4 or 5 pulls for it. But otherwise, you can't buy the pulls with real money. So they added, what I always wanted out of Genshin, they added a free-to-play gacha just for a little bit more extra gambling, which is also with big impactful actually buffs. So huge props for them for not making real money. So you have to give credit where credit is due. I said, if it's real money, I'm going to shit so hard on it. Here's the credit. They didn't do it. Okay.
Wuthering Waves. A lot of these other games are just so much better. It's built on...
Okay, so... now he says how Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, and Genshin, and the games that aren't even out, that you didn't even play, are so much better. What do you mean? Please elaborate. So much better is a interesting statement to me, because obviously, if you like open world, I can only bring this argument because it's literally the only thing that's objectively, I think, better in Genshin. It's like literally that it has better if you like an open world is that it has an open world, right? So. What do you mean, Asmongold? What do you mean? Like, and I don't think the climate, right? I do play almost every good game I think is interesting to me, and I play tons of games. And for me, the market does not have the game I enjoy. So I don't know what you're talking about, Asmongold, but the market for me is not saturated. It's not full of great alternatives to Zenless Zone Zero. So please elaborate on a similar game like Zenless Zone Zero, please. Don't use Star Rail. Star Rail is an auto shitty JRPG. That is one of the worst abominations of video game design I think I've ever seen from the auto implementation. If it didn't have that, it would, I think, a perfectly normally fine game. But the combination of auto and weird JRPG combat system just makes it just honestly fucking terrible from that perspective. It just ruins everything for me. If it didn't have an auto mode or be like this, it was completely designed around of the auto mode, I think it could have been really fun. Like auto battlers basically are only interesting if the auto battler mechanic is quintessential to it. And if you just add an auto mode without making the auto battler mechanic interesting, I think that's actually a big flaw in a lot of I'm quickly going to check something here, sorry. Yeah, that's actually a big flaw in a lot of gacha games. I think they're using auto systems without designing the game around the auto system. I think that's a terrible design decision often. Obviously, it is the reason why you might argue, why do people have auto systems, right? Well, there are 2 reasons. First of all, mobile games, people doing it on the side and literally not playing the game. So it's like you can do it on the side, which I think should be forbidden, honestly, because it's like ecologically terrible to have a device run computations that you're not even looking at for no reason. You could just put a skip button there, right? And have a timer between the skip buttons. So I think that's terrible. Obviously, some people like to watch it sometimes, but most of the time people don't watch it. So I think that's like from an ecological perspective, I would definitely, limit the availability of that feature if I was like the government. But whatever, right? For me, it's just a waste of resource. But that's like a small aside maybe. But then again, I think they really do this only to really. And that's also an argument they're going to make a lot that I'm going to disagree. They're doing this to literally cater to the least common denominator, which is basically the worst player, right? The worst player can't play the game itself, so he just presses auto, easy clap, right? and he doesn't even have to play. So it doesn't require your time and it doesn't require your skill. So everyone can do it. That's why they do it, right? And yeah, and sorry it fails miserably at the implementation, in my opinion. So yeah, calling that a better game, obviously for me is already like very, very bad. I'm not talking about like story. I'm not talking about how the characters look. I'm not talking about the core combat system. I'm talking about the overall gameplay experience, right? That's my perspective. So yeah, but yeah, then again, right? He argues that there are a lot of better games out there. There are not a lot of games actually like that out there. So I don't know. It's kind of even if you consider Genshin, Wuthering Waves, and Star Rail as direct competitions, which they are not really, in my opinion, because it's like a different type of game. But I'm pretty sure for some it is. So yeah, I don't think even if that's the case, he's right.
On doing money? Yeah. What's the story? I don't know. I might play a bit more of it myself and see
So,
what it's built on doing money. Yeah.
It's built on doing money. Every product in existence that was not made out of humanitarian mega nice reasons is built around making money. But guys, I mean, obviously you solve a problem, and then once you solve the problem, you build a product that's built around making money. Everything you do is built around making money, right? Which streams you watch, where streamers are like, thank you for your X years subscription, thank you for the donation, whatever. Hey, yeah, nice to have you around, welcome here, blah, blah, blah. All those things are just being said, not to build a nice environment to hang out often, but literally just to endorse people to actually give you more money, right? So also those things happen, right? And I think in general, in the capitalistic world, products are built to make money, and we're talking here about gacha games, which is literally gambling, often for children. Obviously, it's a predatory monetary system. Yes, these games are built around making money, but I think especially the Genshin and also this game do a great job so far to not force you to spend money. There's a big difference if you're being gated or if you can spend money if you want something, right? There's a difference. And I think these games really tread the line in a nice way. So saying this game is built to make money is true, as for any product that's been ever sold to you. But the reality is actually, I think, even though it is a gacha game, it's one of the most nicest games about that. If I start up Nikkei, I'm gonna get a pop-up for the shop with a FOMO limited time 2 hours I can buy. Then I'm gonna be coerced into going into the shop every single day to get my daily bonus, so get accustomed to clicking the shop buttons and whatnot, right? There's so many more Predator, and then there can be the 1,000 different currencies in other games, like a Lost Ark, whatever. So this argument against this game, sorry, you're just a fucking idiot, right? And he should definitely disagree here and say that all the other games are just the same. Wuthering Waves, Genshin, Star Rail, exactly the same. All not maybe the worst offenders, obviously, like this one isn't either, but definitely in the same vein. So there's no way this is an argument against this game specifically.
What's the story? I don't know. I might play a bit more of it myself and see.
Okay, he doesn't know about the story. I don't give a shit too much about story in games. I think the game, the story so far has been enjoyable, though. No idea how I'm going to feel about that later on, because usually the more they drag on, the less, interesting they get. I think it's in line with what I would expect from Star Rail at the start. Genshin is too long ago. I can't remember. Genshin also had some nice moments. But I think actually Star Rail and this one definitely had more interest, right? For me, like the order of interest in the world building perspective is definitely from favorite to worst is for so far just like the personal preference, right? The style of word I like Zenless at most. I like Star Rail second. I hate Star Rail most, by the way, from a game perspective, but just from a lore setting perspective. And Genshin is generic fantasy, quote unquote. So for me, it's third, right? It's not that interesting. I don't like the writing, especially. I'm also talking about the writing. I think like Star Rail and Genshin have way more like realistic writing, and Genshin has like this very childish way of writing stuff, which doesn't have to be terrible, but just isn't too engaging for me personally, right? I don't need some kind of hardcore grown-up shit. I just need like a bit more normal human being interactions. So yeah, that's my order.
See what it's about.
Yeah, so he doesn't know the story. I don't know much about it either. Seems to be in line with many games I've played so far. Nothing too weird. Wuthering Waves seems to have a very terrible story, but for me, that's not important. I think if you like a story in Star Rail, Genshin, whatever, you're gonna enjoy this story too. It's equally well made. Maybe even the best so far. I don't know, but it's like hard to tell. Yeah, Star Rail and this one definitely have a good start though. So, and obviously, let's talk about the, the elephant in the room. Why does Hoyoverse treat Genshin the way it does, right? Why doesn't it all in? Why doesn't it like really, really give it its best to make Genshin the best game possible? I feel like, and that's just my impression, they kind of don't like that it's a Breath of the Wild ripoff in a way. I mean, I argue that for me, it's often the better game than Breath of the Wild, right? I find it better, and I find it also like more interesting. And there are a lot of unique things, so it's a very unique game. I don't think it's a copy, but still there are a lot of elements which seem like copies, right? Like if you look at Mondstadt, the first area, is literally just like also the enemy design, everything, just like literally looks like Zelda, right? So maybe it's because they didn't feel like this was our baby. They don't care too much about it, because I feel like with Honkai and this one, they do feel like it does feel like they care a bit more. But I don't know. Maybe that's just like maybe it's their style. Maybe they just make games and then like they just like keep them on life support until the next game they make drops. I actually don't know, right? So this is why I'm not so quite sure about the story aspects, but yeah, he doesn't know either because he didn't play enough, because that's something you can only know when you played enough, right? Okay, but let's see.
But yeah, that's the way
Okay, we just made a 2-minute video to a 20-minute video. I'm worse than Asmongold actually, but because he reacts always and then makes a short video and really long. But like I said, I'm only going to make this once, so this is a one-time thing for now, and I don't tend to do these types of reactions too often. But why I like reacting to Asmongold is not because he's popular, because I think he's an intelligent person, and he can see a lot of value maybe in this type of content. If you should ever one day, which you probably won't, like almost 0% likelihood, but if you should ever see this, you would probably maybe find a bit of value in it. And other streamers, I think, are just like not receptive enough to even see criticism being brought up as being realistic.
I feel about it.
Going to be a good one. But another reason why people aren't satisfied, I think that if the game launched before Wuthering Waves, I would think that it would get a better reception, because people already tried how you can get one shot from bosses and how a lot of...
Yeah, that's true.
Now I don't know Wuthering Waves, so I can't talk about it. But getting one shot from bosses in a gacha game kind of sounds for me like cringe, to be honest, because yeah, it is pay to win. So I don't know. It kind of sounds cringe because I'm like, I could be good, but it could also be very, very pay to win. So I don't know about that, right? It's just instantly there is like some kind of gut reaction where I'm like, oh, pay to win and challenge can work out. But I'm just thinking about the worst players, right? They're gonna be, you're summoning an Elden Ring, you're gonna be fucking pulling in gachas, right? That's the comparison I'm making. If you get a Spirit Ash in Elden Ring, you can just use it. You don't pay money. But if you are blocked in this game, because it's like maybe similar difficulty as a Souls-like than this one, then in this one, then you literally have to pay money to get the summons. So that's kind of yikes, right? So I don't know about that one. I mean, I'm kind of not sure. It might be amazing, but I don't know how it handles it. I didn't play it, but it sounds kind of more or less weird. But let's see.
Like, having Wuthering Waves released before this game made this game look like garbage.
Okay, so Wuthering Waves was so interesting to me that I didn't even start it. So yeah, so he said the game looks like garbage. I mean, and then he's gonna say 6 out of 10 is a good game. I don't know, just like choose your words wisely, man. So because you're kind of like going from this game is fucking garbage to this game is good, kind of good, right? So I think, I don't know about that. I didn't play Wuthering Waves, but like I said, it's a different type of game. It's an open world game. The combat, if you just take the combat at face value and compare the two, maybe Wuthering Waves has an amazing combat system compared to ZZZ, right? And then even better, I mean, for me, that's better than Genshin. So I don't know if he considers Genshin better than Wuthering Waves in combat department. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, honestly, because he doesn't know how the combat system works. But yeah, so he's saying Wuthering Waves kind of shits on ZZZ. I think they're completely different games. Setting is completely different. Game type is completely different. Not an open world game at all. Completely different. and maybe the combat system can be objectively compared on a reasonable matter. I can't, so I can't unfortunately do that. He can't either because he doesn't know the ZZZ combat system, but which is what where it's funny. He doesn't admit it. I admit I know nothing. He doesn't admit he know nothing about ZZZ because he played for 2 hours. So, I mean, maybe 20 hours. I don't know how much he played. He didn't play enough because you will see he will ask a dumb question, which will make me doubt his knowledge about the game significantly.
Absolutely. But I think also we're seeing that inside of an echo chamber of people that are like more serious gamers that are watching YouTube videos about these games. So like there's a good chance that Zenless Zone Zero could be very popular with brain dead normies.
Okay, so honestly, you can tell I'm very brain dead, and I'm also very normie, not invested into video games. And that is the reason why I should definitely, hate on ZZZ and, everything else is better, or it's fucking filthy casual game. And I'm just joking here, obviously. I wouldn't consider me, a casual normie. And I also wouldn't consider, he's like literally calling people out here. I would actually argue that it is different. I think casual bad players will find ZZZ that are I think it's interesting. The niche, maybe it's an unfortunate situation, the niche of players that actually care about games and informs themselves about games, that will try out ZZZ, will be overly critical about the game for the wrong reasons because they don't understand the game. So if you're bad at games but into games from a more watch video perspective, whatever, which I think actually most people are, right? Just because you watch a lot of Twitch and you're really deep into games, it doesn't necessarily make you better. It makes you more knowledgeable, right? So I think there are a lot of people like that, and I think ZZZ definitely is one of the games where people like Asmongold, which are not good at these games from the get-go, it takes a little bit of time to warm into them usually. Or he never gets good at them because he just cheeses them at some point, like Elring. But the thing is basically they will miss a lot of stuff at the start and shit on it immediately because they're literally comparing it to stuff they know. If you don't have prior knowledge, you're going to take the game for what it is. If you compare it to everything else, obviously you can always draw unfavorable comparisons. If you want to compare apples to bananas, it's so easy, right? I could literally argue, you can argue with everything in life that has nothing to do with each other, right? So I think Asmongold definitely saying this is a very stupid take and is really, really disregarding what the game actually does. So I think, difficulty alone is not a sign for casual gameplay or not.
Like if you're thinking of normies with the brain capacity of a vacuum cleaner, then maybe this game could be popular.
Brain capacity of a vacuum cleaner. I would assume that most vacuum cleaners have superior volume to the human skull, but I don't want to shit too much on you, Asmo. I like you, right? But come on. You don't need to insult people for liking something you don't like, because I'm not insulting you, right? I'm saying he's intelligent, even though he's being stupid about this one, right? So I'm being very, very honest about this.
Modes aren't that easy, and then we went to a very easy game.
A hand vacuum cleaner, by the way, not one of the big ones.
Wait, what again?
Then maybe this game could be popular.
One shot then?
Aren't that easy, and then we went to a very easy game.
A hand vacuum cleaner, by the way, not one of the big ones.
Oh, okay. So I forgot about that one. Even the hand vacuum cleaner can have a lot of volume compared to the human brain, because the human brain is here, Asmongold. I don't know if you think it's here. The human brain is up here. Right now he knows. I'm just joking. Right? It's here, and a hand vacuum cleaner probably is this size. Right? So, Asmongold, I know you realized your example was pretty stupid, but then you corrected it to something not quite right. That's what he does, right? He says something objectively wrong. He's intelligent enough to realize it's wrong, and then he just tries to convince people that he knows, I didn't mean it like that, right? Yeah, which happens all the time when you stream. You say stuff you don't really think about, but yeah. It's kind of interesting. I think this perspective is something, because I know I do it sometimes too. I say something and I'm like, it's kind of stupid, but I actually meant it differently. But sometimes I do mean it differently, but sometimes obviously I realize it was stupid, and then I will usually, but unlike him, I will say it's stupid, right? Usually, so.
That'd be too much.
I can see that point, but to be honest, let's be real, the game is overhated. I think that a lot of people are...
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, the game's overhated. For sure, right? For sure. The game is definitely overhated for so many reasons. But, yeah. Obviously, depending on where you come from, there's a difference between not liking a game and hating a game, right? So I think it's really, it's getting a lot of flack for things it doesn't do wrong.
either hating for fun or the things that they don't like are just personal preference. Like for example, let's talk about the TV mode, okay?
Yeah, see, that's a really base take from the guy here. Is the personal preference is what Asmongold is confounding with good game and bad game, right? A game you don't like doesn't necessarily can become bad. I always argue like that, right? If 99.9% of people find the game the most fun and amazing and you don't like it, yeah, for you personally, the game is quote unquote bad and you're not having fun, but you can still admit objectively it's good, right? For most people. And I think it really requires another level of skill to actually realize that there's a difference between I think the game is badly made, but I realize that most humans are designed in a way that they will enjoy the game. So I think that's super important to actually realize the difference there. So I think Asmongold kind of doesn't do a good job of extrapolating his own opinions to the objective existence of the game, which he can only subjectively perceive, which is why it's so difficult to do that. So I think he can realize people will like it, but the way he can't really argue in their favor. He can't steel man their arguments too well.
The TV mode is probably the worst thing they did on the game. And I actually agree that the TVs in a lot of things kind of useless. Like, why did you put TVs here and there and a lot of it in the main story? Like, they need to change that. They need to make it.
They need to. Okay, they don't need to do anything, first of all. The TV mode is the puzzle progression mode. So it's basically it is basically the mode that leads you to combat encounters. You could imagine it's like walking around in a classic dungeon crawler before you meet an enemy and then you go into the combat mode or something, or in JRPG until you meet the enemy. So what does it do actually, the mode, right? The mode is, first of all, it has puzzle elements in it if they want to, right? So there's like a puzzle element in it, but like I said, puzzles in video games are usually like really stupid, so nobody gets stuck on them. So or you can just Google them anyway. But anyway, it is a light puzzle game. And what it does basically, it allows you to do a bit of storytelling, visual novel style with additional traversal and decision making from the player. And it's basically like an over map level selection screen, basically with a little bit of gameplay in it. And at first, you might say, yeah, it's kind of weird, but the more you play it, the more you realize it's actually a sound game design, right? It is literally a fast, efficient way to convey information, because games are about conveying information to the player and making that information fun for him. And I think if you look at Genshin, if you take the Genshin map and you can convert the Genshin interactions to this TV system, right? The TV system is basically able to convert any amount of information, but it changes the way you interact with it, right? So in Genshin, if you want to go to a domain, you're going to have to press forward for 10 hours and you're going to have to climb a little bit, but it's just like going to take a while. But it's going to be comprised of repetitive walking forward actions. In the TV system, it would literally be one click and you would be at the domain, right? And in between, you get maybe a few loot drops, which you can then put in the TV as additional fields and whatever. So yeah, why do people initially think it's bad? Well, they come from open world games. They come from the real world where everything's 3D and interactable. And I think just because the real world is 3D, it doesn't make 3D game design inherently better than 2D game design. And the reason for that is pretty simple. The real world and 3D spaces require significant amounts of effort and time to move around in a cognitive, satisfying way for humans if you don't use endless fast traveling. So if I want to get from my room from point A to B, or in a game from point A to B, it's going to require a certain amount of time. And condensing that down in a 3D world feels really awkward. If I literally go and see a door in a 3D game and a TP to the door when pressing A, you're going to have a weird warp effect, whatever. It's kind of weird. It doesn't feel natural at all. So just condensing that down to a 2D perspective, which is also abstract from the real world, that we can actually relate to it easier, right? So I think it's a very smart move to make it approachable. Then obviously there's the roguelite mode, which is where it starts to make sense, to be honest. I think in the other one you might, it's nice little puzzles, it still adds value, right? But in the roguelite mode, it makes the most sense. He's going to argue like that too, I think. But I think the roguelite mode is definitely where it really makes sense, because you have penalties for every field you go. You have like decisions where you go first and whatever. So it's like, it is part of the gameplay. And it's well made, and it's by no means worse than an open world, and has a lot of advantages over it. So I think not liking the puzzle sections is a personal preference, but it has nothing to do if it's good or bad. It is good, right? It's good. You might not like it. It's good. So far. When it's bad, I'm going to let you know. When it's shit, I'm the first person to shit on something when it's bad. It's not bad. So, yeah. The one thing you could argue is kind of bad is maybe at the start is you're a bit confused by the visual design because like so overloaded, so stylized. But that is definitely not a problem later on. Later on, everything's really clear. But at the start, definitely the readability is a bit suboptimal. That's for sure. Yeah. But the reason why I'm talking a bit super positive about the things is because I'm like, that's why I wanted to react to the video, because all the opinions being brought up here, and not all of them, I just agreed with them. All the opinions being brought up here, most of them are literally opinions where I can't say the negative thing about it. When I will agree with them, I will let you know, right? As soon as Asmongold'S says one thing, I'm on board 100%. I will completely agree with him. Okay, don't worry about that. If it comes, that's why I've been reacting. It's such a weird video to have from Asmongold for me, because I usually don't watch videos where his opinion is like completely wrong most of the time. For this video, it definitely, unfortunately, is.
Easier for a lot of people. To be honest, in modes like the simulated universe of this game, I actually enjoyed the TVs. Yes, I thought they had a meaning inside this mode, in only this mode. I thought, okay.
Yeah, I have to take a 2-minute break here, unfortunately. I see you guys in 2 minutes, and then we're gonna finish the video. I'm sorry it's so long, but like I said, it's like I really want to elaborate because I don't want to stand there and just say he's wrong cause reason. I really want to elaborate where I think the reason's right. Okay, but see you in a moment. Okay. I am back. Sorry for the brief interruption. Yeah, so let's continue with the video. Just a reminder, we're talking about very limited gameplay experiences here, both on Asmongold'S, the original video creator, and my side. So this is by no means a final discussion of the game. We might end up agreeing on a final verdict if we ever play enough of it. It's just like the initial impressions are very, very flawed here, right? So just remember that it's all about our current impressions. Long term, the game could become complete garbage, and we don't know yet, right? Or I don't know yet, right? And he doesn't either. So, okay, let's go. This just a quick reminder here.
Okay, keep the TVs in this mode. This is good, but in a lot of other modes, in a lot of other ways you play the game, there is no need to do TVs every time. So they definitely need to change TVs, but at the same time, I found that TVs are kind of personal preference too. Like I found some people that like TVs, and even
I'm sure some people like it, some people don't like it. That's the same as anything else. The TVs, so you go from, like, imagine like right here, you go from here to here to here, like theoretically from the different TVs, and it's like a maze inside of the level. And then on certain one of these TVs, there's a bad guy and you have to go inside the TV and kill the bad guy. That's basically the way that it works. I think here's also another issue is like...
So, okay, I obviously agree. It's personal preference. Both of them admit that. And I already argued why I think it's good design, but it's still personal preference. Obviously, if you like open world games, you're gonna be enjoying those. You're gonna be enjoying those. They're capturing. You're gonna be enjoying them more. Yeah, with the video. Oh wait, the video is black. Is it actually black for you guys?
My own video about it. So if I look at right here, for an example. And then I look at right here, for example.
Yeah, you can, just for you guys. Okay, let's look at the images. We see some sort of crystal. We see a train station. We see crates, and we see like, urban, concrete and stuff like that, right? And, enemies.
Right here, for example.
Okay, what do we see here? Potentially train tracks here, I don't know, but we see a crystal, we see like urban environments, but this time it's more like a city, like different parts of it, concrete but different floor. And yeah, it's also gray, it's concrete, it's an urban setting. Okay. It's all within like the first few hours of the game. So he did play a few hours, yeah. So okay.
I am in basically the exact same place.
Okay, so
there's nothing really new about this. There's nothing that's unique or different or anything like that. I'm doing the exact same thing, spawning in the exact same place.
Okay, it's not the exact same place. And yes, you're fighting. Okay, so the funny thing is, if you would apply this to Genshin and you're in Mondstadt, you would very highly likely would see an area with trees, fields, right? And open fields. That's very likely in the first few hours. So it would do the same, but you would definitely say, yeah, sure, it is kind of samey. But what you're going to end up noticing is that Asmongold doesn't like urban aesthetics. And there is an argument to be made that urban aesthetics are not in the human nature. To be humans like nature, right? If you look at the sky, usually it's pretty. If you look at grass and trees, usually you find them pretty. So there's a human, environmental appreciation level, which is like hard grained into the human mind. And the urban landscapes usually are not as visually appealing to people as like nature. So I think like. That's one of the reasons why you could say like the game has a harder sell for some people because they don't like the urban settings. I don't mind the urban settings, I actually like it, but obviously I also do like variety. I have no idea how the later areas are going to look like, but obviously if you do an urban setting, it's gonna look urban. And then there's one thing I'm going to criticize about the game, which I think is why later on when you compare it to Genshin, it's going to look less interesting. And I think that's something I don't know if Asmongold actually realized, and I also don't know if he turned on the desaturation filter. But the game in general has a very very light and bright colors, and is very contrast poor, right? It doesn't have a lot of contrast, so it's a bit more quote unquote dull from a visual perspective, especially if you don't put the filter to 0, which I would highly recommend, to be honest. And yeah, I think that's actually an art design decision, which is okay, but also kind of removes this visual pop and variety. Because if you have like if you have desaturated colors, every area you're going to show is going to have the same vibe. It's going to be more consistent in art directive, because like that's why people think like I put a black white filter on my movie or my photo, now it looks like art. It doesn't look like art, it just looks consistent because you have like one color scheme, so it looks like an entire whole picture, right? It's like it merges basically the different parts of the image into one, what do you call it? Yeah, a pleasing aesthetic, basically, or pleasing. You could argue if it's pleasing or not, right? So having color filters usually adds to like help bring together the different art elements without them sticking out too much. I'm personally not that much a fan of it, so that's definitely always something I would criticize about the game. But about the doing the same thing, I think if you play Genshin, you're gonna explore the open world and you're gonna mostly do the same thing there too. So no idea how that's different. So maybe just a night combat arena, which is fine, I guess. I don't know, but I think he's talking about the visuals too.
It's repetitive, yeah, it is, and I think that's also
okay. It's repetitive. He does his dailies in Honkai Star Rail, by the way, and he plays World of Warcraft. Yeah, I don't know. Repetitiveness is a topic that is kind of weird, because mobile games usually are intended to be played in quote unquote shorter bursts, right? So repetitiveness is always like a subjective perception of things, and you can say objectively, yes, stuff repeats. But then again, this guy here, I think he plays PoE too, Asmongold, and he also plays World of Warcraft, and he played Lost Ark, and all these endless grind games, and he didn't mind there. So I'm kind of, I kind of wonder which aspects he finds annoying, because repetitiveness is inherent to most games, because you might be wondering why actually is that the case. Creating novel, new experience with especially the same combat system and inputs is very difficult, which is why I think Genshin is struggling to add new meaningful content that feels as good as some of the original or like mid-game life cycle content it has put out, because it tries to innovate. It also has the same base, core mechanics. It is you can only do so much with that, right? And the reason why they don't swap it out too much is, first of all, you can't change the controls every single time because it's fucking annoying for the user. But also creating general, new novel content obviously takes more development time. It's easier to just make an arena, put enemies in, and let you fight them. So obviously there's also development time there. But there's, since I'm a big fan of roguelites, for me, this is not a criticism, because I like the way that you just focus on combat, and that is not dialed down by quote unquote meaningless exploration in between. So I think this is, for me, is a big plus, but it's very subjective, and I think some people might dislike the focus the game has on combat if they enjoy other things. So definitely, if you're not into, if you don't enjoy the base combat, you're not going to have a good time. And this is where these people, especially Asmongold, is coming from. I guess that doesn't have any clue how the combat system works and doesn't enjoy it as a result. So
another big issue. It's super repetitive.
Myself,
I would argue it is by no means more repetitive than Star Rail, especially than Star Rail, which is literally just auto watch every single fight, than Star Rail or Genshin, right? I mean, Genshin, you could argue if the world exploration is less repetitive because of the amount of time spent in it, but the combat, if you just take the combat for face value in Genshin, is actually more repetitive than this game, because this game has enemies where the patterns actually matter. In Genshin, you usually just fucking ignore what the enemies does and just insta-kill them. So I think, which you can also in this game, but definitely in Genshin, you don't even have the opportunity to fight them differently often, right? It's just like the same thing over and over again, which is one of the flaws, I think, in Genshin's combat system. But, you know, that would require you actually to understand this one to not make that criticism, I guess.
Kinda enjoy them sometimes. I won't say that I never enjoy TVs and puzzles, but maybe because I like puzzles, you know? Would I say that most people like puzzles? I don't think so. No, the
Candy Crush disagrees. Actually, casinos are a good example for that, because a lot of casino slot machine design is omega easy puzzles, quote unquote, right? Because it's literally just luck often, but it has some quote unquote puzzly elements to it, very light puzzling. So I think very light. Actually, the irony is you can think of every game mechanic as a puzzle, right? How do you fight? Do I attack? Do I block? When do I use my skill? All this is basically a puzzle, but it's just like real time, and it works like naturally. And there are like puzzles which are like slow and forced. And if you make those very simple but still engaging for the human mind, but just adding some like fun visual elements and stuff like that, I think even easy visual puzzles can feel engaging to the player. Just look at Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild or Genshin's open world puzzles, right? They are puzzles. So I don't think puzzles are the problem. I think it's the perception of a 2D plane versus a 3D open world that is like, oh look, they didn't even bother making this world fully explorable. The game must be shit. Right? This is where people are coming from. So, like I said, if open world is the main draw for you, this game is shit, right? Because it doesn't have one. But so is Hades, so is Doom Eternal, so is Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne. I mean, you could argue that Sekiro, you know, it has a semi-open world, but it doesn't have an open world, right? So you can argue a bunch of games are shit based on that logic. So it's kind of stupid, right? So that's why I'm not making that argument. It's just like personal preference. I think there's a big difference between bad game and personal preference.
Zenless Zone Zero experience is good to see, not to play, at least for day one. After that, the game improves even more, like I'm in day 2 now. But day 1 feels kinda slow, it feels kinda annoying, the game is easy. Although the gameplay looks very, very good, it's not very enjoyable. It has...
Okay, so enjoyment is subjective, obviously, right? First of all. And now I'm gonna agree. And you're gonna say, what, you're gonna agree the gameplay doesn't feel good at the start? And I think that is actually true because you don't know how it works. And that is the biggest point I'm really trying to make here is the lack of understanding of the combat system is going to significantly make it feel worse. And especially if you're coming from a game with high tier, especially if you're Wuthering Waves, your characters are built, Genshin, your teams are built well, the rotations are on point. You're going to have almost no downtime. You're going to know what you're doing. It's going to feel impactful. Here in this game, you go in and you don't know shit, right? You don't know that, you know there's an attack button, a dodge button, and then you might just like start playing it like Genshin or whatever, but you don't know about the parry system. You don't know about how the swaps work, about what good rotations are, about when should you dodge, when should you parry, all those things, right? You don't know these things. So obviously you're going to be ass at the game. Then, since the game has this very high initial, learning curve from an understanding perspective, not from a beating perspective, I think making the game very easy is very good for players that want to get good, but it's very bad for players that should be forced to get good. So my argument basically is the game tries to, like almost like other game, like Star Rail, Genshin, whatever, tries to be really, really easy so everyone can get through. But I think why it doesn't matter too much in this one to me is basically because I think it actually gives you time to learn the combat system on your own pace. And I think that is the big problem. The combat system alone, I would be amazed if someone played this game for one day. Maybe if you play more than me, I guess. So if someone would play this game for an unsubstantial amount of time and come out knowing what the combat system is like, even reading through the explanation of the combat system, which is incomplete at the start, too. You don't even have the tutorials you can play. Would take so much time and effort to really memorize and then really to convert into actual gameplay. I think most people just playing the game are just like not understanding what they're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing in a game, that feels kind of bad. So I agree. The start feels bad because you have the amount of self-learning required is too high. And I don't even think it's bad tutorialization. I just think putting the entire combat system in your hands right away will make people play it wrong. And I think this might be one of the things they could work on is basically force the player to learn the mechanics before moving on. And putting a lot of damage on enemies is not the way, to be honest, because I think that would require you to actually just like get good right away. I think it's better to not make that happen, but really to emphasize certain mechanics until the player gets them down, like repetitiveness, right? Just let the player just parry 10 times. I mean, it's boring. I know it's boring, but I mean, make it skippable, obviously, but just make it happen, right? Explain the player, how does combat look like when you know what the game is like. There is no indicator in the game. You can see every description. You can see every description for everything. You can see videos of it, everything. But the game never actually tells you what is it supposed to look like if you do it like it is intended, right? So I think that is the core issue the game has with tutorialization. It doesn't tell you what it should look like. And we're going to come back to that too with Elden Ring, for example. I think Elden Ring, when they talk about it, I'm going to make a similar point about how the worst part about Souls games is the lack of a good tutorialization. And that could make all the difference between making the game very easy and accessible or very quote-unquote difficult and annoying for some people to get into, if you're not like into learning by failing, which is a valid way of learning, but not for everyone. So yeah, and it can also be unnecessary sometimes.
Some depth in it, but you don't need it. That's my problem with Genshin. But even Genshin was more enjoyable as a start, or even for a whole month.
Okay. Now he's comparing Genshin after a month. I don't know what Zone Zero is going to look like after a month. It's not even been out for a few days, but so we don't know, right? But the thing is, it might become shit after a while. I actually don't know. Even for me personally, right? So the thing is, he just argued that you don't need the mechanics. I don't think that is wrong in a way. It is a valid criticism from a non-casual mobile game design perspective. But since we're still talking about mobile games, where you really, really want to get everyone on board, I think having a very low floor of entry, especially we're talking about games that are predominantly played on auto, right? Gacha games are usually very, very much full of auto modes and help mechanics, skip mechanics. And Zenless Zone Zero doesn't have that. So you really want to make sure that even these people can somehow start to play the game. But you have to make sure they at least know what they're doing. Because I think even though the game starts off like that, using the mechanics, and that's the argument I really am going to make later, it's not about having to play defensively. It's about killing the enemies faster and making the combat more enjoyable, if you know what it is. If you know how to play it, it's going to be faster, more fluid, more fun. And that's why I think they should have really focused on teaching the combat and not by adding difficulty, just by literally telling you how we think you should start playing the game. And then you can do whatever the fuck you want, right? But yeah, it is really, I think the core enjoyment of the game is actually very much hinging on having a brain and figuring it out yourself for the moment. Even though the game really tells you what you can do, it doesn't tell you how it works together efficiently. So I think really they need to kind of teach you that better, but not necessarily by making the game difficult. I think that's not what they should do. They should definitely just try to make it, better tutorialized, which I think is the same Souls game should have done, right? They shouldn't make it easier. They should just make it better tutorialized for beginners. And you might say, blah, 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 just get good. I was one of the first people to import Demon Souls out of fucking I don't even know if it's Chinese or not, out of Asia, right? I was one of the first people to import it when Atlas didn't fucking bother, not Atlas, but then Namco didn't even bother publishing it in the West, right? I read an article on Eurogamer about it, and was like, hey, that sounds fun, getting shit on by a game, cool. Sounds like fun to me. Ordered the game, played on PlayStation 3, Demon Souls. And back then, no Fextra Live, right? No big wikis, no information. You didn't know what a Souls-like was, nothing, right? And I enjoyed it immensely. It was so fun to me. But one of the reasons why I enjoyed it was a funny thing. It was a little booklet that came, not booklet, it was like one folded like poster that had like the basic controls on it. And the funny thing is, it had things on that weren't in the game as a tutorial, like the backstab mechanic. So these things are things you should obviously tell the player, right? Figuring out that there's a backstab or a riposte in the game is, in my opinion, nothing you should just try out and see what happens, right? That's something that should be tutorialized because you don't know it's possible, right? A new player could beat the entire game never knowing there are backstabs, and that's stupid, right? So I think these core mechanics should definitely be tutorialized. And one of the reasons why I enjoyed Demon Souls so much was just like because I actually literally, obviously I found out a lot of this stuff in the game myself because there was nothing. but I had this one booklet telling me a few things that I wouldn't have known otherwise, which really made it feel way better for me. For example, how many people know in Elden Ring you can hold down on the digipad to go to the first, I think this is the first or the flask, I actually don't know. I think it's the first item. It might also be the flask, actually, no. Maybe it's healing flask, maybe it's first. I don't even know, because I always have the healing flask in the first slot. But if you hold down the digipad, you're going to jump to the flask, right? And as far as I know, the game never fucking tutorializes that, right? So such details should not be something you have to figure out by looking up wikis or stuff like that. It's just like fucking stupid, honestly. So that's one of the reasons why I think tutorialization matters. Okay, now he's going to make a really funny point about the graphics.
Well, it's like if you play Genshin, like already visually, look at that.
Okay, and we're looking at Fontaine here, which is I still played, but I quit in Fontaine. So we're looking at Fontaine, an area that is way. I mean, yeah, sure, it's the current state of Genshin, but when Genshin came out, you had Mondstadt, which by far didn't look as visually interesting as this, I would argue. But now, yeah, obviously, this is a fantasy world, right? Green, lush environments, naturally pleasing to the eye.
That looks amazing. Like
yeah, I think it looks great. Yeah, right. I don't disagree there. It looks great.
Compare that to this.
Okay. Now it's so funny, right? Obviously Asmongold likes fantasy settings, right? He's like a big fantasy guy. He likes, you know, also pretty generic fantasy, which this obviously is, right? Mondstadt, I mean, this maybe not as much, because I mean it is though, but Mondstadt especially is very generic fantasy. It looks very generic, right? So this is super generic, but it looks pleasing because it's like a natural beauty, right? So the reason why this here is a very interesting comparison, because you can see the saturation between the two, right? This one is very, very, yeah, I kind of suck at skipping here. Here you can see, like, here, this is what I mean. The game has this weird color filter. I don't even know if you turn it off or not. But even if you turn it off, it's still like kind of desaturated. So the saturation is definitely not there, and they went for like a very, very deep poppy style. So if you're into poppy stuff, this is nice, right? Even using HDR for this game doesn't do much, because everything's like so dull from a color palette perspective. Not in a negative way, just from an objective perspective, that it doesn't really help bring out the highlights too much. So I think really they could change that easily, right? That's just literally a color filter thing. It's not. It has nothing to do with how the game is designed. But he has the filter on for sure, I think. It seems like very blue on his part. We could use a video of mine as comparison, but I'm kind of lazy. So the point is, does it look bad? No, right? This is like a cool urban environment, but it just doesn't look as poppy. So I think if it would be as poppy, I think everyone would probably say, yeah, it's kind of equal, but just different settings. And obviously this is not doesn't have natural beauty, right? So, but I still like it visually. So I think like Asmongold is right that this looks beautiful, but for me, this also looks very nice. Yeah. Maybe not as much natural beauty, but this looks visually pleasing to my eyes.
It's depressing. Everything is gray.
There it is. Depressing, gray, monotone, right? Desaturated. Is this depressing and gray though? I mean, yeah, sure. It has this color filter, which you maybe turned off, maybe not. I don't know. It always has a little bit of that. I think he didn't turn it off. I mean, maybe I should pull up a video of mine as a color reference. Yeah, maybe we should do this. By the way, everything you see here, this is you can see I wasn't signed in here. So everything you see here is basically YouTube's random recommendations based on the few videos we watched on stream. And so you will literally not see a lot of information right here. Yeah, let's pull up a video of mine as comparison so you can see how the colors look on my end. Because I have the default brightness too. I don't know if he's using that. So let's see about the last stream here. Let's see how different our game looks to compare to his. It's just like out of curiosity. I want to be, you know, like bring out some comparisons here. Okay, and we can also talk topical. We can also talk like technical. As you see, I'm a super small.
Right,
you know, I'm a super small YouTuber. Okay, here you can see right away, right? You can see ray trace reflections. You can see it looks way more poppy, right? I think already here we can look at. Pretty sure we're gonna find a similar area to his though. So. Yeah, but does it look depressing? I don't think so. It might be a mental issue on S. I'm not even being joking. I'm not even joking. It might actually literally be your perception of what you think a city looks like. So yeah, I don't think like really if you look at it, right, this doesn't look depressing to me, right? I mean, here it did like the ray tracing stuff, demonstrations. But just if you look around the area, I don't think this looks depressing to me, right? This looks nice, but this is the city area, but it has a lot of visual pop, and let's see inside. I want to compare like one of the areas that is kind of similar to where he was. Also here you can see, right, there's a lot of geometric detail. Here there's like tessellation going on the ground. Okay, maybe you can see in the video, but this is actually 3D. It's not a flat ground texture. So from a technical perspective, I think the game is definitely better than Genshin. Maybe also because it doesn't have an open world, right? It can obviously use the resources in a more limited scope, which is obviously easier. But yeah, you can tell, right? It has the desaturation still, but it's not the same time of day here, which is kind of annoying to compare it to. Yeah, and as soon as you move the camera, the bitrate obviously is going to change too, and it stood there. So can we actually see? Yeah, can we see this color-wise? Yeah, you can tell he has the color filter on because you can see the. I mean, maybe we should show the wall. Yeah, this is perfect actually. You can see that even if it's light, he still has the color filter. So there's a little bit more vibrance here. I mean, can I make it smaller? I guess I can't because this video is here. But you can see what I mean. It's like it's a little bit more poppy, but this is not depressing, right? I think this is nice, especially if you look through the world. I think it's like a very, like, I don't know. It's just like, I think it's very visually pleasing, to be honest. I think it's not depressing at all. Yeah, and obviously this is the first area of, I think, 5 or something that are in the game. So yeah, I don't know. And also the UI, you know, it has so much pop and style to it and whatever. It also tries to go a little bit for the retro CRT style at times, so you can just like see, like the game has so many visual elements to it. Okay, also this looks pretty, the store, right? And there was looking if they had like real money microtransactions, but definitely you can see it, right? Honestly, this doesn't look depressing. I'm sorry, I don't know what Asmongold smokes, but yeah, for me this does not look depressing. I mean, this is like the combat simulation area where you just try out your characters for the first time and you learn them. But yeah, I don't think this looks visually depressing at all, right? So, okay, well, that's just me, maybe. Maybe it didn't turn off the slider. And also, where it doesn't look depressing at all, I think is actually in the, I mean, depressing, and where it looks really colorful is in the UI, right? The UI elements are super poppy, and also here, this mode here, I think is visually well made. I mean, obviously it's also going for like a gritty CRT style, but I think it's visually well made, right? You have the different like color things. Okay, maybe this one is not as fun engaging as the roguelite. I played it offline. I mean, I was looking for the stuff I played offline. Sorry that I also play these games offline. But still, it is, you know, it's not visually depressing. I think that would be a very, very unfair thing to say. Okay, so let's continue here and look at a few more arguments. But I just wanted to show that he probably has the color filter full up. I think still they could make it even more poppy on average, but I don't think it's bad, right? I think the color filter shouldn't be there at all. I think it's kind of weird. It also has like a blue tint. So yeah, see, I can criticize the game. Don't worry about it. Literally, if I don't like what I'm seeing, I'm gonna tell you, right? It's not like I wanna shit on Asmongold because I really like the guy. So it's coming. All this is coming from a place of good faith, right? So sure, let's continue.
Like, it just sucks. Like, I don't know what else I can really say beyond that. It just fucking sucks. Let me see if I can find another image of, like, combat. And also, like, everything out in this open world, you can go and do.
Also, this image kind of seems like the person has some kind of color filter over it, because it's, like, super glowy. Like, all of this is, like, over... I don't even know if this is, like, the default look of the game. And again, it looks really pretty. So this one just looks like kind of oversaturated. I don't know if that's actually the area here, but in general, Genshin obviously has areas that look way more like, you know, a normal saturation level.
And you can do that right from the beginning of the game. And that's the same as Wuthering Waves or any of these games.
Okay, now the open world argument.
Another image of, like, combat. And also, like, everything out in this open world, you can go and do. And you can do that right from the beginning of the game. And
yeah, can you go to Fontaine right from the beginning of the game and not get shit on by the high level enemies? No, maybe you can actually. I don't know how that works. But would that even matter, right? Would it even matter? I mean, being able to go everywhere sounds so nice until you realize the three-dimensional argument I made before and the limited amount of time we have. If we had an infinite amount of time, infinitely large, like even maybe planet-sized or like universe-sized landscapes would be interesting. But maybe a few people start to realize that the size of the open world doesn't really matter, but it's the quality. And even the world itself, not the open world. I think Asmongold is kind of like confounding quantity of stuff you can do and the freedom of movement with actually quality of the world. I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to not think about. Yeah, but if you really care about open worlds in games and that is interesting and important to you, ZZZ is not an open world game, so no idea why he's comparing it on that level. I mean, obviously, if you enjoys that more, that's true, right? You will not like ZZZ if you only care about open world. Or only if you find that an important part. But then you could argue so many games don't do it, and for so many good reasons. For example, Tetris. Is Tetris an open world game? Is Pac-Man an open world game? Is you could even argue is Pokemon an open world game, right? I mean, the new one maybe from a technical perspective, you would wish it isn't. But does the open world always enhance the experience? I don't think that is actually true because we are, like I said, human beings, and we can't just like literally spend hours and hours and hours traversing open worlds and giving it meaning. So, and then if you make it too compact, then it also feels kind of weird. I don't know. It is a challenge. I think definitely Genshin and also Breath of the Wild tend to oversize the world for just visuals and not add a lot of meaningful exploration mechanics. So, see, Asmongold, you like Genshin, but at this point you could say, yeah, we can go everywhere, but why does Genshin have such a limited array of movement stuff, right? Why does Genshin excel at combats, but really fail at traversal? The physics of traversal in Genshin are so shit, right? The way the character overcomes mountains and obstacles, everything is so primitive. The animation level and the accuracy, you go over things. If you, for example, use like a specific character's abilities, go up stairs, you get stuck on them, stuff like that. And you don't have a lot of fun, meaningful exploration abilities. The funnest I actually found was just literally Yelan, because she was like a speed boost, right? Just using the Yelan skill. And then the problem with the Yelan skill is another one. Then you're forced, quote unquote, to play a character on field you maybe don't want to see. I mean, Yelan's cute and everything, but you literally play her because of her traversal skill. And then also she has like the blue tint when she sprints, which is not optimal for exploration because everything just looks blue when she sprints and you're going to sprint a lot. So I think like there are a lot of issues in Genshin. They never kind of solved making traversal as fun as combat. So I think the traversal sections in Genshin are okay-ish, but they definitely could be way better. So I think like what he's like wants here, I think, is not what that even tries to achieve. So he's like comparing bananas to apples here. So I literally don't know why he cares about that so much. I don't care about that at all. So I like open worlds. I like concise areas. It just has to be fun to play. I don't care why it's fun to play, right? So I think like this argument comparison is kind of missing the point of what that tries to be at all.
That's the same as what
just
Wuthering Waves or any of these games. They're open world.
Any of these games, open world games. Okay, Star Rail. Not an open world game. A billion other gacha games, also not open world games. Any of these games. So he's like lumping it into games which are not the same genre, which is kind of so bad, right? It's like he's talking about Candy Crush and Diablo 4 in a sentence, which after Diablo Immortal it might not be that hard to do, but you know what I mean. So I think like Asmongold is kind of doing a disservice to the game by just making stupid comparisons. And
world games. So, like, what do you...
just again, another
and
point.
Also, like, everything out in this open world, you can go and do. And you can do that right...
Okay, the do part is also interesting, because what do you actually do? What do you care about? Do you care about the meaningless puzzles? Do you care about the endless walking? Or what do you care about, Asmongold? Right? So I don't know. Tell me, what do you care about? Why do you think the doing part is well made? Because I think the doing part is okay-ish, but often I find myself wanting to do more of the combat, but the game doesn't want me to do it. The game literally is designed around not having enough challenging combat or long enough combat. So you see, it's not even about challenge. It's literally about the combat being so easy that you can't even do a full rotation before killing everything in the open world, right? If you have a well-built team, you're just going to literally shit on everything, right? You can't even do your normal combat rotations anymore. It's literally you're not even gonna see. You're gonna see your first or maybe second character usually because everything's already dead, right? I mean, later on, I don't know, maybe they made it harder for Fontaine, but for a long time, literally you were only gonna see your first two characters the entire time, and sometimes you maybe gonna get your healer out. Yeah, and in the Abyss, obviously you have your nice rotations and everything, but in the normal game you don't have that. So it's kind of, I don't know, but that's a late game problem, I guess, more than an early game, but.
The beginning of the game, and that's the same as Wuthering Waves or any of these games. They're open.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like comparing apples to bananas, so no idea why he's doing that. And you could, what I wanted to say is if ZZZ actually tried an open world and failed, this would be a perfect comparison, right? Look at Wuthering Waves, look at Genshin. They do this, they do that. It doesn't work in ZZZ, blah, 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 right? You could do this, right? No problem. No problem. You can easily shit on ZZZ for having a bad open world. That would be so easy and so fair. But he doesn't try it. It doesn't even want to, right? It's like he's like taking the opinion, the personal preference of the game designer when it comes to the core game design, and literally just saying, yeah, it's not like the others. That's why it's bad. You should say that's why it's not for me, right? That doesn't make the game bad. You can make a bad open world game and you can make a bad non-open world game, or you can make a good open world game, a good non-open world game. So sorry, Asmongold, that argument is not an argument. It's literally just like comparing completely different
games.
Target goals.
So like, what do you do inside of Wuthering Waves if you just want to play the game? Not a lot.
Learn how to do the reaction, to dodge.
Wait, what?
To play the games. So like, what do you do inside of Wuthering Waves if you just want to play the game? Not a lot.
And what are you doing with Wuthering Waves when you want to play? I think he wanted to say ZZZ maybe? I don't know. I don't know what he means. You're doing not a lot in Wuthering Waves. I think he meant ZZZ. Which is not true. You're doing a lot, right? So I don't know. You're just not exploring an open world, which is, you define that as doing something.
How to do the reaction, to dodge sometimes, but here the mobs need like to hit you like 20-30 times to kill you. This is insane, at least from the start. I'm talking like this is the start of the game.
Yeah.
And I do know,
if I say Wuthering Waves, I mean this is Zenless Zone Zero. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, so he meant Zenless Zone Zero. Okay.
This is insane, at least from the start. I'm talking like this is the start of the game, and I do know the game has to be easy from the start, especially for gachas. Even Wuthering Waves, the first crownless fight is easy, but I think that they went too easy on the players. But looking at the gameplay,
I don't think it's like I argued already, I don't think it's too easy. I think it fails to tutorialize the correct way to play the game, which is why people fail to play it. Also, Monaco is such a niche game. Monaco, what's yours is mine, also was like a Pac-Man-like, and a lot of people played it like a slow-paced stealth game. And yeah, it's always kind of sad to see people completely miss the way games are meant to be played. Because the reason why it happens, why does it happen? Usually there are three reasons. The first one is it is easy to play the game wrong and you can win doing it, which is the case here, I guess. The second is another game that plays XYZ and you're going to copy that 1-2-1 to your game if it's possible, and thus you're going to play it wrong. Classic example, Sekiro came out, people tried to play it like Souls games. It's actually a rhythm game, people didn't realize and they didn't like it because they didn't know what it was. They played it like Souls, it wasn't Souls. Game, I guess it's on the player, obviously, but you do have to really teach players if it's like that, right? It is so easy to make a game that is logical for a new player, but not logical for people that come from established franchises. And the third one is bad tutorialization, right? That's one of the third argument, basically.
The gameplay is very smooth. There's something about the game that's very smooth that I like.
Yeah.
The movement looks very cool. There's a lot of things that are good in the game, but you cannot use that. You cannot utilize what you're doing. So I
don't know what he means. What can't you utilize? I mean, you don't have to utilize it, right? You can utilize all these things. So I think he just misspoke here.
I do not think that the game is bad. I think there's a lack of difficulty in the game. That's it.
Okay, lack of difficulty. Yeah, I mean, obviously, for me, every game is easy. I mean, not every, right? But almost. I mean, is there a single hard? I guess Eternal Noctis was kind of hard at times, yeah. And I guess you could argue there's some old arcade games where you have to grind a little bit and get used to the patterns and stuff like that is, quote unquote hard. But I think most modern games are not really difficult. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of there are not a lot of games that challenge me at all. So for me, looking for challenging games is not what I do, right? If I look for challenge, I don't know. I guess I just can do, I don't know, I go bouldering, I go like my physical limits, I go like do some science stuff, right? Some engineering stuff. So I guess, that's my real challenges, because I don't think games are meant to be that level of challenge. I think games are just casual enjoyment. And if you look for difficulty in games, I think, and by the way, now this you might say, why can't it have difficulty? And we're going to come back to that argument a little bit later. I think there is a valid point to make that these games should have higher difficulty for two reasons. Later on, the reason is, first of all, the dev can sell more pay-to-win stuff to players, which you might not like to hear, but that's going to happen if you make it more difficult. It is a gacha game. It's unavoidable. So that's first of all the thing. And then second of all, I think it's fine to have different levels of difficulty in a game if the content is designed around player choice. So I think the game already has a cool idea by adding a difficulty slider to the story. I think it doesn't go far enough there, right? I think it literally could make an easy mode and a medium mode and a super hard mode, or at least a super hard mode. So I think having the difficulty slider setting, they kind of failed to make the hard one hard. I think that is a valid criticism, right? If you already have it, make it hard, right? But then again, it's completely fine for a lot of story to be not that difficult and just like put the harder parts towards the end of the game. And the reason why you would do that, also Asmongold's going to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it when Asmongold talks about it, but yeah. I do agree that the game should have, the hard mode should be harder because it's optional and doesn't give you additional rewards.
I like this.
Well, the lack of difficulty comes from a lack of complexity. There's only
no, Asmongold. Ooh, yikes.
Like one thing that you can do. You can use your skill, you can use your ultimate,
Yikes.
and you can press spacebar to change your character or dodge.
Yikes.
Like there's just not a lot of depth there. And like even inside of Elden Ring, like you could say, oh, it's like Elden Ring, there's not a lot of attacks. Like there are a lot of ways that you can do the same attack. Like for example, in this game, you can't even jump. That's crazy.
Story, I like.
Yeah, see, Asmongold's being a complete baboon here, and every single thing he says is wrong there. Like lack of complexity, and then he takes Elden Ring as an example for a more complex game. I mean, you have different weapons, different spells, different, like, all of these are side grades, right? The moment-to-moment complexity of combat is limited to very, very few attacks you can do, and like the complexity of, if I would have to put it in a comparison, I would say it is at least twice as complex as Elden Ring, right? Just from the pure amount of inputs you can do and you can do while playing the game nicely. And I think even the defensive options already, like, I mean, sure, you can dodge and parry and block, whatever in Elden Ring, so there are a lot of options, but you're not going to be using most of them conjunctively, and there are not even that many if you use all of them. And in ZZZ, you have like the parry system, dodge, you have like individual character skills, which is like literally like having multiple ashes of war and weapons you're constantly swapping between. So I don't know, Asmongold, you're kind of being an idiot there. I'm sorry. What are you talking about? Like the less complex? Genshin, for example, is less complex. Obviously, most characters are less complex than the ZZZ one. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, you have a fourth character, but you have a pet that's going to help you. And obviously the reason why there are 3 characters is because the combat system of every individual combat character is way more complex than in Genshin. So they didn't want to overload you by having 4 characters to choose from. And also gives like a nice sense of rotation having 3. So I think it's very, very well designed. And it is not a lack of complexity, right? And the comparison with Elden Ring falls flat immediately, because Elden Ring is one of the most simple and streamlined combat systems out there, which is why it's pretty, right? It's pretty because it is so simple. It's not perfect and needs a lot of refinement. And even you could argue it needs more complexity to keep up with what they want to do from an enemy design perspective, which is why sometimes in the DLC it feels like you're just like looking at the enemy and dodging and dodging and dodging and just waiting for like the one hit you can do sometimes. Because it's just like so much focused on the enemy patterns. And this is what I talked about, right? There's like what the player can do and what the enemies can do. And if what the player can do is shit, it limits heavily what the enemy can do, right? In theory. Even if this game right now shouldn't have any challenging enemies, it still will lead to a potentially very, very cool late game combat system because there is a lot of skill in it, right? So there's a lot of potential skill from what the player can do. So I think the combat system is very good. It's not like restrictive to what the enemy can do. The enemy designs can be very crazy with this combat system, and I think it's very well streamlined and doesn't rely on gimmicks like healers and shields to be effective against a lot of things. So I think Asmongold is completely missing the point here, and the reason why he does that is because he does not understand the combat system, he doesn't know the intricacies, he is not a good Souls player, so he doesn't understand really how complex Souls really is. So I think like he knows a lot about Souls games, but the comparison here shows basically he's comparing really one of the most beautifully simplest game out there. I mean, with a lot of flaws, obviously, but the core idea is very beautiful, just attack and dodge, right? And attack and block or whatever you want to do. But it's just a simple combat system, right? Just like the real life, you're just hitting and dodging. Every dodge might feel a bit different because the pattern is different, but it still is very simple, right? So I think he's taking the worst example to prove his point. He could have found a billion games that are probably equally complex as that or more complex, right? And does complexity equal good? No, right? Complexity doesn't equal good. So I think even if there's more complex than Elden Ring, it doesn't necessarily make it better, right? Or worse, right? It's just like a different flavor. But saying a lack of complexity is absolutely wrong. And yeah, he's going to realize it one day if he continues playing it, unless he really, really plays it like Elden Ring and just like holds down a button and presses another button. But and now he talks about this jump, and then he obviously is playing Honkai Star Rail, whatever. What is a jump in a video game, right? A jump in a video game has a reason why it exists, and usually the reason is because the level design requires you to jump, or you want to design a level that requires jumping, and it also adds like a sense of freedom. Why would you not add jumping to your game? Well, first of all, it adds a lot of complexity. It adds complexity to the inputs. So if it doesn't have a reason to be there, it shouldn't be there. Should it be in Zenless Zone Zero? No, because the game doesn't really want you to jump anyway. It's not designed around jumping, so there is no real reason. It's not like you feel, oh, it would be nice if I could jump, right? Like in Souls games, you always were like, it's a 3D world where you have like vertical exploration. You always were like, yeah, jumping would be kind of nice. And then you had the jumps, obviously, which were super awkward, right? But they never felt good until Elden Ring. Elden Ring then had other issues with the jumping, but still, they added jumping, right? So it is a necessary means to traverse the world. Then the Zone Zero's world does not require that, and it's not focused around it. It's not an exploration-based game. It's not a platformer. It doesn't have any of those elements. And I'm going to tell you why that's amazing that it doesn't have jumping. The reason why I think it's amazing is actually very simple, because I think and not having that feature means they can't make many dumb mini games where you have to jump and run shit like in Genshin, which is one of the worst parts of Genshin. Is literally every event is like, hey, you have those amazing gacha characters and your cool team comps. How about you don't use them for the event and just use a bow and shoot 1,000 balloons, or you jump, I don't know, like you play the worst 3D platform you've ever played. And I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? Just make a stupid minigame there or whatever. So I think that not having jump is good for the game because I know how Hoyoverse usually likes to do this stuff. So that's a very, like, I guess, advanced perspective on it. But I think not having a jump button is such a dumb criticism and really misses the point. It's like saying Elden Ring doesn't have a first-person shooter mode. Right? It doesn't have third-person shooter mode even. It doesn't have a Remnant. Which could, by the way, no, that's actually a good argument that range combat in Souls games should actually work like in Remnant. So I think that's actually a good point. But it's like saying you don't have certain inputs. Like, let's say, what didn't you have? It's like saying you don't have swimming in a game that doesn't require you to swim because there's no water, right? It's like, I don't know. It's just like, it is an input that doesn't really have any use, right? How often do you jump in real life? That's the one question I would ask you, right? You jump often in games because, like, often, why do you jump often in games, by the way? Because traditional level design was 2D. And 2D means if you want to have a physical representation, either you do top-down. In top-down games that have very rarely jump buttons. There were some, but it was rare because you couldn't see how the character jumped so well. So, like, usually you had side-scrolling games, like a vertical perspective, and then you need a jump to have a physical sound game because you wanted to have the gravity pull downwards, but still have the access to higher elevations. So instead of just making hills and, you know, ladders, which was Hills was difficult anyway, like vertical lines and whatever, like at the start, not that great to do, right? So they focused on the jumping mechanics. So that's why gaming always had more jumping than real life. In real life, you're barely gonna jump ever, right? If you don't do sports. Jumping is not a thing you commonly do. So that's why I think Asmongold's argument is completely bullshit, and he's like really grasping at straws here to, I don't know, prove a point. I don't know why he's trying to prove it. It's okay he didn't enjoy the game, but it doesn't. The way he's trying to justify it is kind of, or like rationalize it, is kind of weird.
I like how they present the story, even though I didn't expect to like it. I was like, okay, this is a visual novel. I won't be able to.
Can't even tax. Like there are. That's crazy.
Story. I like how they present the story.
Okay, here. See the train? See the train? There's a train flying through the air.
Even though I didn't expect to like it.
Okay, just remember what he's the train.
I was like, okay, this is a visual novel. I won't be able to like this story, but no, the story was actually enjoyable to me. The gameplay is also.
The story so far, I thought, has been. It's not as bad as the beginning of the Wuthering Waves story.
Can't talk about that, unfortunately.
It's better than that, but that's like beating the slowest person in a race.
Like I said, for me, it's in line with what Genshin, Honkai Star Rail, or I mean, most games actually do, and that's because maybe I'm not the biggest guy in the story, because stories are always kind of samey. So yeah, you can only do so many emotionally attached, emotionally receptive stories without resorting to like cliches and stuff like that. So the more you consume, I guess, the more you get bored by story, which is why more gameplay, because game always requires like a direct interaction. These are infinitely more complex than just like listening to stories, right? Just imagine reliving the stories. Every time I think gameplay is reliving a story. Telling a story is just telling a story, and it's like very limited. So you can say, hey, there's a story about going into the woods and killing a few enemies. And you can tell the story over and over. Yeah, he went to the woods and killed a few enemies using a sword. He went to the woods killing a few enemies with magic. He went to the woods killing a few enemies there. He went to the woods and blah, blah, blah. And then you can add a few like events and whatever. And there's just a bunch of permutations. The spider dropped from the ceiling, blah. And then you had the campfire. They met. They, maybe they even fell in love, blah, blah, blah. They were adventurous, blah, blah, blah. You can just put a bunch of stuff in there. But all that obviously is like using words and like a higher dimensional space to describe something you could actually relive, right? And then you can go in and play those moments. And then you have a lot of nuance, right? When I fight with my axe, suddenly it matters if there's a wolf, there's another knight maybe assaulting me, whatever. You relive the moment. And that has way more potential for storytelling than actually just saying what is happening, which is a lot of games do because it's way easier to do these days. But in the future, I'm pretty sure storytelling is going to revolve around actually showing us, like more like movies actually do it, right? So I think actually games are still kind of in their infancy when it comes to how actually you present the story to the player. And even then, obviously the amount of stuff you can do is like more limited for the moment. So I think like there's a lot of potential. So I don't think for me stories that interesting in games, just because it's not well made in most games, right? And that includes bunch of games, right? Literally a bunch of games, which is why I like the just get out of my way approach from Souls games, where you can, have a little bit of feeling of being in the world, but nobody's like in your face and telling you, you are the great blah, 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 do this. Oh, and now we're going to have a 10-hour cutscene. And, that's what I like about Souls games. But obviously you can dislike that if you really like people telling you what's going on. So, yeah. But then again, fuck the story. I don't care about that too much. I mean, it's well made in this game so far, as much as in any other game I've played, but, so, yeah.
That doesn't mean you're fast.
Enjoyable. There's some.
Yeah, and he's saying, oh, yeah, look how bad Wuthering Waves is, but this game is better. But that's like being better than the worst. But okay, but why don't you compare it to Honkai Star Rail? Why don't you compare it to, I mean, he's going to do that, and I'm going to talk about that, I guess. And why don't you compare it to Genshin, whatever, right? I don't even know if Asmongold remembers the start of Genshin, right? Wasn't very interesting, to be honest.
Cool strategy to it if the mobs are doing some damage, which they will do when you progress into the game, but it's still not enough for now. I hope that the more I progress into the game, a little challenging. I want to need to dodge at least once or twice.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good fair point, right? At the end, on the higher difficulty setting at least, which should be optional in my opinion, you should definitely require the player to sometimes dodge and parry to not lose HP. So I can't speak about that, but not having that from the start is perfectly fine, because the game has so many mechanics. But it's fine from not being annoying perspective if you know what you're doing, but it's not fine, obviously, from a tutorialization perspective. So that's definitely a criticism, which is why I think the perception of the game has become as it has, because people definitely are playing the game, I'm not going to say quote unquote wrong, but yeah, that's maybe
Now, especially
best
day
thing about
one, it felt like button mashing. You only like use left click and that's it. But here
Yeah.
I wanna call some people that are going like, okay, PGR is better. Here's
Wait.
the it. Day one, it to need to dodge at least once or twice. Because for now, especially day one, it felt like button mashing. You only like use left click and that's it.
You see, that's what I said. When a game doesn't tutorialize the optimal playstyle and you can get by just doing the simplest thing, people will tend to do that. And that is not a problem with the core combat system. That is a tutorialization problem and human behavioral problem, right? Which you have to solve. And the way a lot of games that are not gacha games solve it is just like we're literally giving you so much damage, you have to fucking do something else. But the reason why you find it tedious and you just press left, it's obviously tedious, right? It's like going into, I don't know, an MMO that just has one attack button. And it's like I argued, and a lot of people will realize how true this is, I think. If ever there should be a Souls game, like Elden Ring or whatever, and I mean, Elden Ring is already super easy, so I guess it's already at that point sometimes. I mean, as the base game especially. But if you just go in and press a button over and over and over again, you never have to dodge because you have infinite HP and whatever, right? So if it's like that, and you can just like literally brain deadly go through the game, suddenly it becomes boring. And the reason why this game doesn't become boring, if you know what you're doing, is because the combat system is more complex, which is completely at odds with what Asmongold'S said. And I think that's actually the best example, right? Imagine Elden Ring where you have infinite HP and you fight enemies. How fun is that? I mean, I would argue not very fun. Just standing there, mashing attack over and over and over again until the enemy dies. Fucking boring. That's it. Infinite HP. How fun is it to kill enemies? Well, you're gonna stun on them. It's like Devil May Cry. You have like, you still do a cool parry here to get more stun, to do more damage, It's gonna look way more fun and dynamic. And you also have way more options to then fight. So this is a prime example of a more complex system carrying maybe a lower difficulty, which Souls games in its beautiful simplicity do rely on challenge for it to be fun. Because this simplicity only works if defense is a core part of the equation. Otherwise, just simple offense without any defense doesn't make any enemy different, right? Every enemy is the same. If you have infinite HP and you can just mash attack, every enemy is meaningless, right? And the reason why in Souls games it's usually not meaningless is because you have to react to what they're doing. That is the beauty of the combat system. And here, even if that is not the case, which it isn't, there are enemies that definitely have different patterns and everything. And if you want to kill them quickly and efficiently, you should react to them too, because a lot of the thing is, a lot of characters are designed around literally having mechanics which increase their damage by as much as 40% when they dodge counter for a while afterwards, right? So they have a lot of mechanics which revolve around the additional, which revolve around this additional idea. So I think it's like very, very stupid to forego that here and say like the game doesn't reward you for it. It does, but you just don't know it at the start, which is the biggest flaw, right? So I think it's definitely a perception problem and not a game problem. And I think intelligent people like Asmongold could see that if they were a bit better maybe at games. I don't know. Maybe it's this lack of skill at games that does him a disservice right here and doesn't allow his intellectual capacity, which he usually always uses to a very nice degree, to analyze the situation in a more concise and logical pattern way. Right. So I think like he's like definitely missing a lot of very, very easy to see points from a more advanced player perspective. Okay, but let's go continue.
But here I want to call some people that are going like, okay, PGR is better.
I don't even know what that is.
I only played 15 hours of PGR, and I'm gonna be real, I think that PGR is just mashing the same button. The gameplay...
PGR, who gives a fuck about that? That's Punishing Grey Raven. That game came out like 6 years ago. Who gives a fuck about
No
that?
idea what that game
That's
is.
their old game.
Yeah, must preface also that I'm not the biggest gacha game guy, right? I actually hate pay-to-win games. If they're like obnoxious about it, and the only reason I actually enjoy games that are pay to win is if they really don't gauge stuff, right? They can be challenging at times, I don't mind that, but I really don't want them to make me feel like I should swipe, right? as soon as I have that, I'm out of there. So like I always like gacha games. I guess the first gacha games I ever played were like, I mean, real life Yu-Gi-Oh maybe and Pokemon, but in not the real world, I would assume it's like probably Hearthstone back then, right? But it was even PvP pay to win, which yeah, it doesn't mean it wasn't fun, right? But still, yeah, you can have fun with those, obviously. But still, I think like that's it's very very easy for me to cross the line between being like fun and then like being obnoxious about me not having the money. And yeah, that's why I usually tend to avoid these games, because I feel like I enjoy myself a bit more in games that value my skill over my time investment. Which is, by the way, nothing negative if you do, and not everybody has skill. So a lot of people can imagine you're super rich, but you're not good at games, right? And then you can pay money to become better at them. That's actually a good thing for you then, right? So it's definitely a matter of perspective. I just don't like that these games are usually very predatory about it. There's nothing wrong about pay to win if it's not done in an abusive way, which is very, very seldomly the case.
Also, like, the people that made the game agree that it's outdated. That's why they made a new game. Nobody gives a shit about that game anymore. It's dead.
Looks flashy and looks even better than Zenless Zone Zero, but I think that PGR also has the same problem.
Also, please keep in mind, I'm not edited. I mean, Asmongold also did this live, but he's being edited, which is, maybe sometimes helping him sound a bit more clear and logical than me. I have no idea, actually. But this guy is heavily edited, so his points are really, really, like, more concise, I guess. Yeah, I'm just, like, freely speaking. I have no script, nothing, so just like, bear that in mind. I'm just reacting like Asmongold did, just without an edit afterwards, so my points might be redundant a bit sometimes.
That's why they made a new game. Nobody gives a shit about that game anymore. It's dead.
Looks flashy and looks even better than Zenless Zone Zero, but I think that PGR also has the same problem.
Want to see PGR? I don't know what it is. Let's see what PGR is. These results are not from me, by the way. This is like the default Edge without any cookies. But whatever you see here, no. Hope there's no porn now. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have just Googled it like this. I hope this game doesn't have porn. Punishing Grey Raven. Oh, come on, there's no porn, right? Yeah, YouTube must be safe to watch. So this is watching on YouTube instead. Why is it yellow? Oh, are we gonna get ads because I don't have my premium account here? Really? No, actually, we're not, right? Because I have YouTube Premium. Oh, there are like characters from Yara Mata in there. See, this is one of the things, right? He said it looks better. Obviously, it looks way worse because it's older. But he said it looks flashier. Now, I'm gonna, I think flashy combat systems are usually bad combat systems for one reason: in visual clutter. The more complex you want to make your game, the less visual clutter you want to have. So too much of it, that can be very, very bad from a playability perspective. So a lot of stuff I'm seeing here seems to be very, very aggressive in that regard. So I think, yeah, I actually think like from a visual perspective, the clarity of Zenless Zone Zero is much nicer than here. Yeah, this is like kind of not that great. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a difference between looking flashy and playing well, right? So I think you could argue that it has more like vibrant colors on the effects, but it definitely looks like way worse. So yeah, there's no denying that it looks very, very much worse, just from a objective perspective. Yeah, I don't know. Never played it. I mean, it does look nice for the time, I guess, for the stuff you're seeing. Oh, Ember's in the game? I didn't even know. Yeah, seriously though. I think like, I don't know about this game looking better. Also like, nah. Yeah, this is not too much my cup of tea. This is more like classic Asia grinder levels of like flashiness, which works well in turn-based games, but in real-time games I usually find it like either it's super dumb and you don't have to dodge and react to anything, then you can just do that. I guess like Genshin does it a little bit sometimes, just like a lot of flashy stuff is going on. But yeah, I think as soon as you have to react, I think Elden Ring also, a few fights show that if there's too much going on screen, it really doesn't help the gameplay.
at least in the first 15 hours. I only clicked
What's
the
that?
same abilities and I finished the whole content that I played. Now you might say, and I want PGR players to confirm this in the comments, you might say PGR will actually become more challenging afterwards and you will have to use other buttons, so don't hate about PGR. Okay, exactly. Do not hate about
I'm not a fan of games that basically the entire story of the game is like zero gameplay effort, just brain dead. Because I think that
Yeah.
whenever you have that, you don't teach players how to get better at the game. They just stay bad, and then they finally hit the point where it's like they hit the reality checkpoint. And because it's so late in the game, and they've already developed like an ego for the game, it makes them feel bad and they quit. It's kind of like the WoW difficulty curve where
Okay, we're gonna do this in steps. I think he has too many arguments
actually become more challenging afterwards.
I want to talk
You will have
about.
to use other buttons, so don't hate about PGR. Okay, exactly. Do not hate about
I'm not a fan of games that basically the entire story of the game is like zero gameplay effort, just brain dead.
Okay, first of all, I'm gonna make fun of him a little bit here. He plays World of Warcraft. He plays Honkai Star Rail, which is a completely auto game for the most part. He plays Diablo. He plays okay, I'm just joking, right? But you get my point, right? He plays a tons of games which are completely brain dead and completely auto. So point disproven, I guess, already, but that doesn't matter, right? It's easy to disprove him here. That doesn't mean I don't agree with him. It's just like he doesn't like. I disagree with this statement because he does like, right? So that's what I was disagreeing with. Do I dislike games being brain dead and easy? So since I already argued that most games for me are that easy, so there's almost no challenge, I guess, in most games. I think, for me personally, right, I think it doesn't matter as much maybe. So maybe that's just my perspective again. But I think it's actually, yeah, it would have been nice, obviously, if the majority of the content was to a challenge level that I find a bit more enticing, right? So that is a fair point. But then now, unfortunately, he's gonna argue a bit weirdly.
Because I think that whenever you have that, you don't teach players how to get better at the game.
That is true. That is true.
They just stay bad.
But like I said, difficulty is not the only teacher. A good tutorial and good visual incentives for correct play can also make a game fun. It is more about learning the combat mechanics than the difficulty. So he's like right about what it does sometimes if it's not well made, and he just like he uses it as an example for, a thing you can solve differently too.
And then they finally hit the point where it's like they hit the reality checkpoint. And because it's so late in the game, and they've already developed like an ego for the game, it makes them feel bad and they quit.
Okay, so thing is, he's right about this, right? He's right that people will feel bad when the difficulty spikes. That's completely natural. That's why people didn't like the final boss in the Elden Ring DLC. That's why they didn't like the Elden Ring DLC in general, because it's like it's the difficulty spike, right? For most people. And I mean, I would argue the final boss, unless you have a very good cheesy build, is for everyone. But if you have a good build, obviously not, right? But still, in general, I agree. But I think that, yeah, people could also quit because of that. But the reality is, and now that's like the sad or the good part is, most of these games don't reach that point. And if they do, there is a reason they do. Why do you reach this point in some of these gacha games? Because they're extremely predatory and they want to gate you and want you to spend money. And not by literally telling you spend $10 to play this, but they're telling you, yeah, if you want to progress, then do it. And the reason why you can do it this way, and that's a very mean thing, is basically you're coercing people by letting them play a lot and getting them into the world, lore, they're investing time, maybe a bit of money and whatever. And then there's this gate. And this gate is basically a check. This is like, oh, I spent already 50 hours playing the game. And I spent already maybe, $20. Am I going to forfeit that just for the another €3 I have to pay here? Or am I going to pay those so I can keep playing? And the reason why I think is very, very hard to do this in a gacha game where you have this gating without immediately resorting to pay to win. So the reason why they would do it would be terrible. So having this spike at the end would be terrible game design. So I don't know how ZZZ's going to handle this. But yeah, that would be terrible, but for not for the reasons he thinks it's bad. Because obviously it's more interesting if everything's kind of mildly challenging, but that's really difficult to achieve without difficulty slider. So the only criticism I really have about this is that the difficulty setting they have is not aggressive enough. It should be way easier to make the game as hard as you want it to be, right? Just give it real difficulty options. So that is a criticism you could have. What does that do? Obviously, why you might ask, why don't they do it? Why don't they 10x the damage? Why don't they, change the values, which is like done within seconds, right? If you have a good table of enemy HP pools, you could literally just alter the HP attribute in one line of code if you've done it in a good way. Yeah, so if you want to, you could literally do that, right? So why don't they do it? The reason why they don't do it is called the feeling of being left out, the feeling of being worse than others. As soon as there is a difficulty setting that you can't beat, you're going to feel like you are worse of a player. And that's something you usually don't want to have in like games as a service and gacha games from the get-go, because people will feel bad about their performance. You want them to feel great and have a good time. So I think the difficulty settings definitely are something which is nice for like, more advanced, more or less casual games. But against that are casual mainstream gacha games from the onset, they definitely don't want you to have too much of a feeling you're shit at the game for various reasons. Yeah. Because most people don't go into this game expecting a challenge. They go into this game because they like the visual design, right? And think the combat looks flashy. So I think he's missing the target audience here.
It's kind of like the WoW difficulty curve where it's like, okay, this, ooh, there it is, right? That's Mythic Plus.
Okay, so yeah, Asmongold, why do you think that is? Why you know why it is, right?
So like the difficulty.
I want to skip him on this. I have him on this picture.
Difficulty and everything that's involved and like expected of you just like multiplies by 10.
Okay, so the reason, obviously, Asmongold, you're a smart kid, right? Or not kid, he's a grown-up. Smart grown-up, right? And you probably also were a smart kid. Because intelligence doesn't really change over age. Just like knowledge and maybe some, ideas and perceptions. So in general, I think, obviously, why is it that most of MMOs are like 95% easy content? And the end, quote unquote, has the difficulty curve spike. The reason is simple. The majority of players is a casual player base that doesn't give a shit about the end. So the reason is you just want them to tag along, have a good time, and just chill through the game. Then they can do all the late game content they want. And then there's this little difficulty knob at the end for the most hardcore and casual players that actually want to know life shit. And that is the minority of players, right? So I think he's like, the reason why it's designed that way is obvious, so everyone can enjoy it to a max and not feel bad about it. And then there's this like little like special difficulty at the end for the elite guilds and whatever that is substantially harder, but also not meant for everyone, right? It's literally just there as a nice bonus to have. That's what we wanted in Genshin, right? Just a small mode, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine if you want to do a mainstream casual game, which World of Warcraft is, which Genshin is, which probably this game is too. So I don't know why you're complaining. It has nothing to do with tutorialization. That is literally inclusivity game design. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Obviously, you can complain that you're playing together with people that don't know the mechanics, sure. But yeah, I think that's not bad. I think World of Warcraft should not look like this. Right? This is Mythic Plus. This is the start of the game. If World of Warcraft looked like this, you bet that most people would drop out here. Because they're just like, oh, nice, this game's too annoying, right? Not everyone wants to play Mythic Plus. So I think even if it was like this, right, like a more slightly more exponential curve here, just like this, even this I think is not a good idea. And most people don't want to be here. So putting it like this is perfectly fine, right? This is perfectly fine. Or maybe even do this, right? Like, this is optional, right? This is the end is optional. Just give the player enough time to get to here. So there could be a huge part here and just a small part here, but this has to be a good leadway to this. There should be enough quote-unquote tutorialization if they want to get there, right? So these people that do want to get good, and you do have to clearly communicate that to the player. So I think he's wrong about the way these curves are.
But then you can start to pay? Yeah, true.
Yeah, and the paywall, obviously, right? The paywall where you get to the point where you can overcome it, which is why this is terrible design in gacha games. You don't want to have this, right? You want to have this maybe as an optional, maybe even non-rewarded part or something, like just like optional part in general, right? The difficulty optional would be very nice and talkable.
Zero from the start.
but then you can start to pay. Yeah, true.
Zenless Zone Zero from the start, but as
It's like Elden Ring's the same way, right? Like Elden Ring challenges you immediately. It says, here's the Tree Sentinel, you know, are you ready to get fucked up? So yeah, it's like all games are like this. All good games are like this. I mean,
he's wrong. Again, he's wrong for so many reasons. Yeah, I think I already argued Souls as one of the most terrible tutorializations in games out there. Which he was arguing that people are gonna quit once they hit boredom, but people are also gonna hit or when they hit the spike, whether they're gonna quit or whatever. But they're also gonna quit when it's like hard from the get-go because of lack of knowledge, right? If you have the knowledge and tools and you know you just have to get good, it's gonna feel great. But if you don't know what is missing, what is the magic ingredient to getting good, and the game doesn't tutorialize that, it's going to feel terrible. Most people that quit Souls games or hate Souls games for their difficulty, they don't hate Souls games. They hate the way it was taught to them. And I could literally, you could take me and I could probably teach most people to easily beat Elden Ring. Right? I could literally teach most people to easily beat the game within a couple, maybe give me maybe half an hour with a person, and they can easily beat Elden Ring without any problem, right? Just like a half an hour. Just give me half an hour, and everyone will be able to easily beat the game, and they won't have any big hitches. And the reason why I think the hitches can be fun to some players, because some people like trial and error, right? Just like banging their head against the wall over and over again. And I think Asmo is also among these people that just like instead of actually getting good, he just like sometimes just like tries stuff out until it kind of works. And yeah, I think like the way also the Tree Sentinel and everything, like the foreshadowing of challenge basically, I think is a good idea if the player likes it, but can also be very frustrating and annoying. I think Elden Ring, basically the Tree Sentinel's job basically is just to tell you, hey, we designed an open world and not every activity is meant to be done right away. You can come back later. That's basically the tutorialization element of it. Obviously, me and other players just like beat it right away for, you know, because we wanted to get good, and then it also was like in the performance, like the lag and everything was just terrible. But I don't think every good game smacks you with a baseball bat right when you start it. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you play Mario Odyssey or like Mario, Galaxy, or if you play Zelda games, whatever, you're not gonna get into a fucking room and get fucked in the ass right away. So I think the majority of good games don't do what he just said. So also this is wrong. So I don't know what's wrong with Asmongold in this take video, but somehow something about Zenless Zone Zero seems to have broken his logical reasoning. Kind of weird. This doesn't happen to him too often that he's so wrong so many times in a video. He's always coming from a place of good faith, but applying it to the wrong things, which he usually doesn't do. Maybe he just had a bad day. I don't know.
Start as an opinion, I think the start of the game isn't the best, isn't the most enjoyable. Does it deserve all the hate for now?
I enjoyed it, but only because I instantly started looking at the combat system. I literally started by looking at what the potential of the game is. Not everybody does it. Most people just play the game, right? And they don't care too much about the background stuff until later. But I'm literally the opposite. I always look at the details first and then I play the game. So I'm like really weird about that. But I think that is why I could actually enjoy this art more than the average player. As soon as you know what you're doing, it feels way better. Yeah, but I would agree the tutorialization is suboptimal because you have a tutorial, but the tutorial doesn't teach you the combat. It just teaches you the elements of the combat. Then you basically have to figure out how to combine them yourself, which is, in my opinion, the hardest part this time around. I mean, obviously there are a lot of mechanics, but then you get them tutorialized and you don't need them, so you're not going to use them and you're not going to learn how the combat should look like. So you have to get active yourself, and since people are lazy, I would agree, Asmongold would agree he is lazy, and lazy is not negative. Lazy is usually efficient, right? Laziness is a very negative attribute in your head, but laziness and efficiency from a human action perspective are pretty similar, right? If you're being lazy, you're usually being efficient about things, right? Often, I mean, procrastination is different because you're usually doing something you can't avoid and pushing it away. But if you're just being lazy, it's like usually your brain trying to be as efficient as possible about a problem. So which often includes not looking at the combat mechanics, which actually is not lazy, right? So yeah, so as we will probably agree that sometimes he can be very lazy. And then obviously sometimes he isn't, right? He's super in depth about other things, so yeah.
No, we need to complete the whole thing. I actually don't think players should
I disagree with this mindset. I don't like the
Again.
the most enjoyable. Does it
No, it's
deserve
not.
all the hate for now? No. We need to complete the whole thing. I actually don't think players should.
I disagree with this mindset. I don't like the mindset that you have to play the entire game in order to think that it's bad. Now, I think that, again, like, what he's saying has some merit.
Okay, so first of all, Asmongold disagreeing here is a big L, to be honest, because we would shit on literally any professional reviewer if they reviewed the game without playing it, right? If you go on IGN, the guy's like, hey, I played 2 hours, game shit, 6 out of 10, or game's okay, 6 out of 10, whatever, or the game is bad too, right? We would laugh. We would say, oh, look at this clown. He played for 2 hours. He's judging the game, blah, blah, blah. No, we would expect him to say the start of the game is bad, right? And then we would expect him to play more. And then he would say the rest of the game is good, the rest of the game is bad, whatever, right? So Asmongold is wrong, because what the real thing you should say, and he's also kind of wrong, because you are allowed to judge the start. You can say the start of the game is bad. That is a factual statement which you can sign, which is not wrong, which doesn't require anything weird. But saying the game is bad is wrong, because you didn't see the rest of the game, right? That is a big distinction, which is very, very important, because if we go on review sites and everyone's just saying the game's bad, good, whatever, and they didn't play the game, what do I care? Right? What do I care? I don't know. The one guy played 40 hours, the other guy played 2, the one maybe played 1 minute, didn't like the tutorial. Great, right? But that doesn't mean shit anymore, right? Because they never gave it a chance. And now, obviously, Asmongold is going to make an argument here. I remember, I think. He's going to argue that you should have a good start and get the players engaged right away. And I completely agree with this one, right? I completely agree.
I disagree with this mindset. I don't like the mindset that you have to play the entire game in
Completely
order to
wrong
think that
here.
it's bad. Now, I think that, again, like, what he's saying has some merit, but I don't think that it invalidates opinions. So if you've played the game for
it's true. It doesn't invalidate opinions. It invalidates your opinion about the entire game, right? So he really needs to make this distinction. He means the right thing, I think, but he really phrased it terribly.
2 hours and you thought the time that you spent playing the game was wasted, then you have wasted your time and the game is bad, and that's absolutely
no. The start of the game is bad. See, you wasted your time. You feel bad about it. That means the start of the game is bad. It doesn't mean the game is bad. It is literally not true. It's literally not true. He's like one word away from it being a good sentence.
fair. It's 100%.
And unfortunately, he doesn't mean it that way. I think he literally means it the way he does. So I think that's a really, really bad take on this.
Fair. So time and the game is bad, and that's absolutely fair. It's 100% fair. So, like, if you do that, and like the first impressions of a game absolutely matter. And
I would 100% agree. I don't think it's. I think for a casual player, the first impression is immensely, immensely, immensely important. If you lose your customer right away, you're never gonna upsell him. You're never gonna get anything, especially in free to play. Free to play is an upselling game, right? It's about really making money later on, usually. And if you front sell someone and the game starts out terribly, you're already invested, right? You're gonna, I mean, unless you're on Steam, you can refund it or whatever. You're already invested. So usually, having a bad start in a full price game and then later on the game gets good is not that bad, but in a free to play game, the start has to be really good. So I do agree. In general, it's always nice to have a good start, right? It's always nice to get people hooked and keep playing. Because even in a game you bought, if you don't enjoy the 2 hours, a lot of people will just quit, even though they spent money and then they will regret the money, blah, blah, blah. So I think the average game experience definitely should be weighted towards the start, so everyone has fun. But in general, obviously, it's also kind of shit if it gets worse later on. So I guess a consistently good game on the broad field is nice, but the start is very, very important from a sales and also investment perspective. Because if a game starts amazing, gets shit, people are going to play more, right? If 90% is good and 10% at the end is shit, people are usually going to play 90%. If 10% is shit at the start and 90% afterwards is good, a lot of people might not even reach the 90%. So obviously, his argument is 100% correct here, right? Like I said, I'm going to agree with him as soon as he's right, and here is 100% right.
I would argue that they matter more than the end game. Because if the first impressions
Okay, now, yeah, from what I just argued, it's correct. But obviously, this has a second perspective. So if you are like a non-casual, super invested player into Genshin, ZZZ, then you could argue that the late game is the most important part for you in the long run, right? So it starts off being really important that it starts off good so you ever get there. But then obviously this is where you're going to spend the bulk of your time. So I think the late game for games as a service games is mega important. And the most important part to get really right? The tutorial just doesn't have to be ass. So I guess just get the people to the late game however you want. But the late game is it's the pinnacle of importance, I think, in these games for a non-casual, quote unquote, playthroughs of the game. So I think that, yeah, for games as a service, I do disagree. For normal games, I definitely do agree that it would be nice if everything was nice, but definitely make the start better than the end. Yeah, I mean, obviously the end is also important. I mean, we know statistically that most people will never see the end of most games. So just like if you think everybody beats games, that's not true. Most people actually drop games, even good games, consistently good games, for various reasons. A new game comes out, no time, real life events, whatever, right? You just forgot about it. There's so many reasons why people drop games. So from a like just investment perspective, obviously making the start amazing is really, really good. So most people will enjoy it, and the late game is quote unquote less important since not everyone will reach it. But for example, Elden Ring DLC, right? The last boss could have been the best boss ever made, but if everybody quits the game at the start because it's like too hard and they don't like it or whatever, nobody's gonna see the rest. So it's like a consistent experience, very important. But in games as a service, I really, really think the late game is the most important. So I kind of disagree because we're talking about ZZZ, where I think the late game, hopefully roguelite inspired mode or whatever they're going to use there, is going to be really good. If that's really good, the daily driver basically, just like if you're playing another run of Binding of Isaac, just casually ignore online a few hundred episodes or something. Yeah, I think that's going to be quite nice, right? So I 100% agree with the start, but this one is kind of, I agree the start is more important, but in these types of games, I think it's very important to get the people into them, yeah, for sure, but the late game is also very, very important. So I think actually you could argue that this investment curve here is like, this one. It starts good, can get a bit worse, and then it peaks at the end, right? That would be the optimal curve for a lazy studio. Yeah, if you want to be lazy about it, right? If you want to be optimal, you're just going to keep it like good, right? But if you're going to be lazy, just starting not bad, going to get a little bit worse, and that gets amazing. That would be the optimal lazy curve, I guess.
So bad that people don't even get through them, then who cares how good the end game is? Nobody's ever going to see it.
Yeah, that's true.
Do everything. Let content creators do their thing. Let some.
Yeah, first impressions are incredibly valid. New players and new player experience is super valid.
Yeah, first of all, new player experiences are valid, but they are new player experiences. See, it's really important to state that. I think if you're open about these things, it's great. But we're living in a clickbait title age where there's written Zenless Zone Zero sucks. They didn't write, or he or his editor didn't write the start of Zenless Zone Zero sucks, or Zenless Zone Zero first impressions suck, right? They didn't state that. They're being disingenuous, right? They're talking about the game holistically from an wording perspective, which is not honest, right? Right? So I think like the reason why I use it just like is, I did the same just for fun with Asmongold'S name in here, just because I think like it's actually quite valid, because you can see we're already at like 12 minutes out of 14, and I literally agreed once with him. So I think like my statement is not baiting, but it's still just, I don't do this usually, right? I just usually say what I think it is, first impressions. So far I really like this game, right? I'm trying to be really, really honest, right? Because yes, first impressions are important, but you are a content creator, you're not a player. So you can say the start is bad, but say the start is bad. Don't say the game is bad. You're being disingenuous to your audience. You're literally maybe keeping people from playing the game, which might enjoy them. And also you're being disingenuous here, because you actually are comparing it to a game type it might not even want to be. So if you have someone in your audience that doesn't care about open world aspects, you're really underselling the game, and you're not making it clear enough that it doesn't have to be an open world game. And you're being highly influential because people that watch you are usually very young, and they might be very biased by your opinion, like, oh, it doesn't have an open world, so it has to be shit, which is not true. So Asmongold, think a little bit more before you actually do these things, so we can actually have videos which have your valid opinions, which might be sometimes shit, sometimes right, often right, in fact, but don't use fucking clickbait titles. And I mean, this case is not even a clickbait title, it's literally just bad video. to literally bring across the point, I think, which is like not the point you should be bringing across if you want to have your audience well informed, which is, I think, is what you want to do, right? You want to have your opinion, give your opinion on stuff, and probably help your audience get a new perspective on things. I mean, I guess you're getting a new perspective by listening to him because it's so wrong. I guess if you would listen to me, you wouldn't get it, right? But I think still in this case, usually Asmongold has like really nice and based takes, which I think is why he's a nice reaction content creator. Yeah, I'm not a reaction content creator. I never do this. This is my first time. Asmongold is my first time. No, seriously. I never do this usually. So yeah, we're going to finish the video here though first.
Free-to-play players go through the whole content and you can see some different opinions about the game. For me, the game is a 6 out of 10. I'm not quitting the game any sooner. Even though the game feels like a hack and slash now, it kind of feels fun.
No, you didn't rate it. You rated your first impression of it a 6 out of 10, right? Like he's talking about giving a final review. Like I said, we wouldn't accept this from professional review outlets. So why would we accept it from streamers and content creators? I don't know why we're like having this double moral value system here.
And I can see that it's promising. The devs are doing a bad job in presenting how the game will look like in the future, because they sometimes say, okay, it's a casual game.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know about that since I don't know, right? But that's my biggest, that's why I always say don't get too invested in the games as a service games. You never know how they're going to go. They start amazing and then they can become like a daily mission commission slog, or they can just like have events which are super casual and boring, and you never know, right? So this game could start off really fun and become really, really bad in the late game. So, you know, it's like, and also the other way. So I think in a way, you know, it's really, really important to actually realize that, you know, these things are true, but this one, this point here.
Kind of feels fun, and I can see that it's promising. The devs are doing a bad job.
Yeah, this is actually true, right? You don't know what the devs want, right? And the thing is, they don't know either, right? They could say A now and do B later. We wouldn't know. So it's always kind of hard. And I don't think MiHoYo or HoYoverse have a track record of actually delivering in the long run. So yeah, that's always the big, you know, question mark. Are they going to nail it this time? Nailing means something different to everyone else. Some just enjoy casual events over and over again. Others just want the core gameplay to be the star. I hope this one is more about the core gameplay than about the gimmicky minigames than Genshin. Yeah, so I don't know. You know, everyone has his own cup of tea. Some people just like the auto, just the casual AFK, just the war system, just farming currency and just like gambling sometimes. There's or cute designs, just like the waifus, like Nikke, for example. I think Nikke, just imagine. This is my traditional bad game test. How do you know a game is actually really bad? It's if you replace the game with stickmen, right? Ugly stickmen, MS Paint stickmen. And once you do that, you can actually see a lot of flaws in the game, right? Just imagine playing Nikke and every character is just a stickman. Would it still be fun to you? I mean, some people that are maybe hardcore into combining stats and aiming, whatever, sure. But most people, I think, would say, wait, maybe actually the visual draw is way bigger than I initially thought. So that's my stickman, mind, experiment that I like to do. Just replace the gameplay with stickman. And obviously, sure, visuals add a lot to a game, but sometimes they add so much to a game that literally the game is completely hinging on the visuals, especially gacha games where you want to pull for waifus and cool characters, right? So yeah, always keep that in mind, like that gameplay might be king in your heart, but in your head, maybe not so much sometimes.
Think how the game will look like in the future, because they sometimes say, okay, it's a casual game, and then in the live stream go ahead and say we will implement more harder things in the future. So yes, I don't
think these are necessarily exclusive. I feel like you can have hard content and still have a casual game.
Absolutely agree.
It really just depends. If you're hooked by endgame, you'll stay. You have to wait until endgame for the good stuff. It won't work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think like I said, you know, you want to keep your game as casual as possible. If it's like such a game, and just add enough challenging fun for the hardcore people. It's like the percentage of engaged super whales and whatever. Like just keep them there, right? I think that's what Genshin never figured out. It never did anything for them. It was so easy to, I don't know, Genshin just completely utterly failed with late game. And you see they don't give a shit, right? They don't give a shit. They literally just let Genshin die. They don't do any updates that are significant. I mean, now Zenless Zone Zero has ray tracing. Not a word out of MiHoYo, by the way, as far as I know about that. Maybe in the Chinese thing, I can speak Chinese. So yeah, I think it's kind of big shame here. Big shame that HoYoverse, for whatever reason, is kind of bad at that. And so I really hope whatever this game ends up ending at, because it's not going to change that much probably if the past is a track record for the like any sign indicator for the future of this one. I really hope it ends up in a very, very good and sound place. So no matter if it doesn't change, it's just like a good roguelite maybe to gacha on. Yeah, I don't know. I really, really hope they don't fuck it up. And obviously you might say roguelite, why are you saying it all the time? I mean, obviously Genshin's Abyss is like very extremely roguelite, but they did a few roguelite modes and events and whatever, like always half-heartedly, right? Then Star Rail had like I forgot the name, Simulated Universe, which is also like roguelite-esque, but since like full auto, who gives a shit? But still, it's like, you know, it's like there are roguelite elements, but in this one, it's like the really core to the design of an endgame mode, which is like refreshes weekly. So I think if they nail this, right, there's so much potential fun and replayability when you always get new characters and stuff like that. So if they nail this aspect, this one could have an amazing late game combat. The core combat system is amazing, and the potential design for late game is already there. So they have the magic ingredients. So I really hope I mean, for me personally, right, if you like combat, if you like exploration, they don't have anything. So just move on and play another game. Which, according to Asmongold, there are plenty, right? So you can play Genshin, Wuthering Waves, and Tower of Fantasy. That's really not a lot of games out there, so I don't know. Kind of weird.
Here's a good example. Like in Star Rail,
good ones at least.
The Star Rail entry level experience was very good. You know, where it's like you're going through new boss fights regularly.
I see. I found it terrible. I'm gonna explain you why. Why was the Star Rail? Let's just make. I mean, we can let him finish maybe, but I don't want to let him finish. I first want to say maybe.
Then you fight this big guy, and then you're on like a fucking a train. Like shit's happening immediately. You're going to another planet. Like things are already like popping off. Things are happening all the time. And then you have like Wuthering Waves, right? You're immediately getting into the combat. You immediately get your 3 characters. You're automatically doing stuff. Like, and there's the little things where, can you even choose which...
Okay, no, this is cringe as fuck. Okay, first of all, why is Star Rail start bad? Because you start and you get the tutorialization, you learn the combat system, everything's rosy, right? Peachy, nice, really good, really happy, cool art style, cool music, you're just enjoying yourself. And then there it is, the auto button gets introduced, and everything you just learned gets drained down the toilet. Oh, you learned all these mechanics, but how about you don't use them ever again because it's less efficient than just pressing on auto for 99% of the daily content? Because so this you're just auto farming most enemies anyway, and you can input as fast as your auto is going to play, so it doesn't even matter, and you can do something else, right? If you're faster playing manually, which you usually, I guess, aren't for most content, you can literally just go do something else in the meantime. So I think like, yeah, the start really promising, then just like shits on it, right? And then it's obviously a JRPG, really different genre, but I think that's true. But then, yeah, sure, he's right about the location stuff. It's really nice to go from A to B to whatever. But this game also has that, right? It also has different locations where you go, but it just doesn't have the visual representation is different, right? It just doesn't have like it's more like in an abstract way. So I think what he means is he doesn't like that you spend a lot of time in certain locations, more like a bit... It's not like, I guess the locations you are here actually mattering in compared to Star Rail. In Star Rail, you don't really have that real home base. I mean, you have to train, I guess, but you don't have this place that has a lot of depth and a lot of mechanics in it, like the relevant city. And this game basically is more like Persona, where you have like a few locations where you can do a lot of things. So I guess this comparison is kind of really stupid here. And yeah, what else did he say at the end? I forgot.
Like things are already like popping off. Things are happening all the time. And then you have like Wuthering Waves, right? You're immediately getting into the combat. You immediately get your 3 characters.
Yeah, but in this game too, you immediately get into the combat and you immediately get your 3 characters. What are you talking about? You start the game with a group of 3, as far as I know, right? I mean, not maybe immediately, but very, very soon, right? And yeah, I mean, kind of weird. Genshin, I guess, is way slower about it, but this one definitely gives you the full access to the combat system very, very, very soon. So no idea what he's talking about here, to be honest. Wuthering Waves didn't play, I can talk about it, but now he's going to say something which will prove my point to a very big degree. And I didn't watch his live stream. So obviously, if I watched more of him, I could way, criticize more specifically. I'm just criticizing him for what he's saying here, right? I'm not criticizing for what he did on stream. So I have no idea what he did exactly because I don't have, the time to watch hour-long streams. So I just watched this video, and that's the only thing I can react to, right?
Characters, you're automatically doing stuff like, and there's the little things where can you even choose which character you swap to?
Like, bro, he doesn't even know the controls, right? He doesn't even know that you can go forward and backward. It's like, it is literally, he doesn't even know the basic shit, right? How could he ever have a real valid, I mean, it's a valid opinion. All opinions are valid, but how could he have a useful opinion for the players, right? If you want to watch someone, a content creator, and if you want to know if the game is good, you don't want to know if the start is shit. You want to know if it's worth doing it, right? That's the answer people are looking for. You're not going to play ZZZ, Genshin, or Wuthering Waves for, I don't know, 10 hours and you're going to drop it. What you're looking for is this a gacha game I want to spend time into, farm polls, and have a good time? And will it become a game that's worth investing my time into? I don't care about the start. Most people don't care about the start. Everybody that's seriously interested in this game thinks the start obviously is important to get the people hooked, sure. But if you go and look for content about the game, you usually want to know if it's going to get good, right? An answer I also can't provide to you, right? I know it's good for now, but I don't know if it's going to become bad later. I can't tell you, right? So I'm not the source for that. Maybe someone that played the beta more or something is maybe, they might have changed something, but still they would be a better source. So I'm just saying the way he presents this is like, you see he's a noob at the game. And he just talks about the game like he's the master of it, right? I think that's so disingenuous. You just say you didn't have fun with it and you think it might be for these reasons, but I actually have no fucking clue. And you can see he has no fucking clue. I spent fucking reviewing 14 minutes of him listening to a video and sometimes talking, and I could only find like 1 or 2 points at the end where I could 100% agree, which is pathetic, right? It's such a low rate, right? So I expect more from Asmongold, to be honest. This is why the first video I've ever reacted to was this video, because I just felt like it's like super inappropriate to argue like this, right? It doesn't, especially big content creators. I think, especially with someone like Asmongold, he can say whatever the fuck he wants, right? It's his opinion, but I think he should at least try a bit more to be a bit more, open, because he's doing his community a disservice by actually just saying uninformed stuff, basically, right? His opinion of not enjoying the start is not a helpful indicator for anyone else, because his reasoning is completely flawed. So I think, yeah, really disservice. If I had seen this video and I was already not sure if I want to play the game, I would not play the game, right? And I would maybe regret it afterwards, because it might have been fun. So that's why I'm saying this video does not do the community of gamers a service. This video is useless. This video adds no significant value. It's literally not well argued. It is not what Asmongold usually does, right? So I think this is why I'm reacting to it for the first time ever. I'm watching his content for years, so.
Or do you just press spacebar and it swaps the next character around? You can choose. You press C to swap.
You can literally choose it, and you can literally also parry with both characters. So if you have a dodge one and you have a parry one, you can literally press the correct button for either dodging or parrying. So it's kind of a shame, man. Kind of a shame. Well, by the way, I'm not saying you should get good, right? You shouldn't get good. You shouldn't have to read all these things. Obviously, the game doesn't do a good job there, but you should acknowledge that he doesn't know, right? That's what I want from him. I don't want from him to get good. I don't give a shit if he gets good, if he understands the game or whatever. I would just want for him to actually realize that he doesn't, and that he is wrong for so many reasons, because he's bad at literally comparing the game to things he doesn't even want to be, and doesn't understand the mechanics, nothing. So I think, right? And then talking about complexity, why he doesn't even know that you can swap characters both ways. It's like, I'm sorry, are you a clown? That's just like, literally, are you a politician talking about a topic you got briefed like 1 hour before your meeting? Or maybe 5 minutes before your like meeting with the others, right? I don't know, man. It's just like, seriously, Asmongold, you can do better. I know it. You've done it I would say 95% of the time, Asmongold does really good content. Sometimes he has bad takes, but majority of his takes are founded in good faith. And, you know, at least you can partially agree. In this video, there are like so few, I mean, maybe at the end, like I said, a few where I can agree. But the other ones are all like, it's so inherently flawed that I just can't literally really agree with it. It's so sad though, because I really think this game is getting a very, I don't care about, you know, am I invested in the game? I mean, I'm playing it, right? So I don't want it to die immediately, obviously. But I don't give a fuck about, you know, Hoyoverse. My first stream was literally called Gacha and Censorship, right? So it's not like I'm not like, you know, talking about the problems and everything. But I don't like for games to being shit on for no reason. I just think like a very realistic and good presentation can help a lot of viewers get maybe more enjoyment out of games instead of just like, you know, misrepresenting them. So yeah, you know. And obviously, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of people that will think like Asmongold, maybe even by themselves. I don't know, but a lot of them are gonna obviously get influenced too. But I think it's still like, yes, his opinion is valid for these people, but he doesn't argue from that perspective, right? If he argued from the perspective of, yeah, I enjoy open worlds more, that's why I don't like that, but that doesn't make the game bad, it just makes it less enjoyable for me. And you can argue like that, right? You can argue like it's your opinion. And he likes to argue like some things are facts, well, it's just like really wrong about them.
They did. So anyway, that was my opinion. We will see in the future. That was the video. Bye bye.
Yeah. I'm gonna be real. I think that this game needs a lot of work. I think it needs an insane amount of work.
I think it doesn't need a lot of work, and I think it needs work for the tutorialization and start. But what you need, Asmongold, is insanely more playtime on the game to actually have a valid opinion for the entire game. So saying the game, see, he didn't say the start of the game needs more work, right? It is so weird. And the thing is, yeah, you could add an open world aspect to it, if that's what you mean by more work, but that is not the same game. That's literally a different game. So if you want it to be a different game, that's like saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure Pac-Man needs a lot of work. So one day it looks like Breath of the Wild. Yeah, it needs a lot of work. Right? I don't know, man, Asmongold. I don't know. This is such an L take video. I don't know. It's so unusual too. Maybe something rubbed him the wrong way, or just got caught up on the hate train. Because this is, for me, this arguing like this is more like, you know, it's like so unfactual that it seems more like hating for the hating purposes, which is unusual for him. I don't think Asmongold is a hater at all. So I think this is like kind of, he just misses so much here. I don't know why. Something is like off. Maybe just a bad day. I don't know. Just something. I mean, obviously determinism, right? His entire brain processes just like information and outputs something. So obviously everyone's going to have the moments where there's like a lot of bullshit coming out. But yeah, it's kind of, I just want to, you know, react here because I think maybe my perspective will add a bit of value to people that actually, you know, want to know what's a different perspective on it. And that by no means, by the way, means that I'm going to give the game an amazing score once I'm done with it. I would give the introduction maybe, I don't know, an 8 out of 10 so far, because it's good, but obviously, like, I think like, yeah, the tutorialization is not optimal, and yeah, sure, it could be a bit more difficult to maybe also enforce the tutorialization, all those things, and you know, it's not like not 100% optimal, but I think it has definitely potential to easily become a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in the late game. So yeah. But I don't think the first impression is 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 is such a bad score for a video game. He's going to argue again that it's not, but it's not true.
You guys the video. Like, I think the people that are saying this game is good are on like massive fucking copium. Like, I'll finish, I'll do more spins on the game, do it a little bit more today.
See, he says they're on copium. Did you just hear me say the game is going to remain amazing and it's such a great game? Oh my god, I'm so hyped. I'm fully invested. No, you just heard me. The start was good. And I have no idea how it's going to become, right? That's not copium. That's literally realistic. But he is on... There should be a word not for copium, but for if you actually take something and you like devalue it, right? You how you call it, negativium or something? Not copium, but negativium maybe, that you're negative, or hatium maybe. I don't know, just like the negativity for the sake of negativity. I don't know, it's just kind of weird.
But like, I don't know, like after I play this game like for like maybe a couple more days, I don't really see myself going and like getting really involved with it, right? And
So he, I mean, I think he's trying to give the game, saying it could get better, which is nice of him to say, obviously, because he's not stupid. He knows it could get better, but he doesn't see it at the moment, which is okay. But I mean, from his blind perspective right now, doesn't even know how to swap characters. You can obviously see how could he see the future if you don't know the present, right? There's a reason why, for example, what's he called? Oh my god, I'm so... See, Asmongold killed my brain. Wait, just a moment here. There's a reason why... Yeah, Warren Buffett, exactly, yeah. Yeah, Warren Buffett basically is a really good investor, but there are two things which make it, kind of boring. Because first of all, he did investing in a time that was way simpler than today, way less variables, way less companies, way less players, relatively easy to predict future. And obviously, if a million people gamble or billion people gamble on stocks, one person's going to get extremely lucky. So he might be a genius, but he might also just have an easier time back then. And so I don't know him, so I have no idea if he's a smart person or not. But just what I want to say is like there's different perspectives and moments to form your opinion of the future. And Asmongold's talking from a very, very oblivious perspective in a very complex scenario. I think like he is not very good at extrapolating the quality of the game in the future. Maybe his enjoyment, I don't know if he has a good feeling about that. Can't actually say that, because depending on if he enjoys open world games predominantly, this definitely is not going to bring the enjoyment to him. So he might be right about that. But in the entire video, he never argued like he's talking about his first impression, and he never said what his state of knowledge was and whatever, right? I mean, obviously you could say, yeah, you can just watch him. No, he doesn't know nothing, but the way he talks, he doesn't acknowledge any of that. So I think everything he says here, the end here tries to like be more open-minded, but it is in stark contrast to the rest of the video.
And it's not amazing. Yeah, it's just it's not amazing. It's not like it's
also Asmongold tends to sometimes cherry pick comments for his arguments. So he just like uses which is what a human brain does, right? I don't know, he's probably aware of that it exists, but I don't know how much he's aware he does it. What you do when you search for opinions online is usually you favor opinions which are in line with what you believe, right? So usually you're very heavily biased to filtering information that is against your bias. So when you're reading a Twitch chat and you just want to, you have a certain thought in mind, or a certain argument you want to make, you're going to cherry pick the comment that's in line with this. Sometimes you're also going to choose one that's against it randomly, I guess, but your eyes and your brain's going to favor the ones that are in line. And what the illusion that's going to create if you don't read the chat is, I actually didn't read the chat, but it doesn't matter. It's Twitch chat, honestly. Like most people in big Twitch chats are fucking idiots. Because they just like post random shitty opinions, which are completely wrong. And not to shit on you, right? But bigger Twitch chats definitely have like very, very weird dynamics. I mean, sometimes they're really based, but sometimes they're also such terrible takes, like really, really. I mean, it's just young people mostly, I guess, that are not that well informed. But yeah, so basically what he does by saying it is like he's cherry picking an opinion subconsciously probably, and reading it out, giving everyone the impression that people he's talking to agree with him, which I guess they might to some degree. But, I think it's actually because I think Asmongold's chat actually, he's an intelligent person. So his chat will be also above average intelligence compared to other Twitch chats. So, for example, compare Asmongold's chat to XQC's chat. I would be pretty sure that Asmongold's chat is on average higher intelligence than XQC, or at least more informed or something, or has better takes or whatever. But you can actually tell that his chat is maybe a bit more, yeah, I think he's a bit more based here than he is sometimes. I didn't read it, but sometimes you see you can only play so many games at once, whatever. These are just neutral takes, right? Which is the reality for a lot of people, right? This game, what does it do actually? Challenges the games you're currently playing. If you're enjoying Genshin if you're enjoying Wuthering Waves and whatever, you have I already talked about that. You have an investment in Wuthering Waves, for example. You are gonna dislike this game more because you don't want your time and money invested into Wuthering Waves to be wasted, and the swap basically has a big barrier for you. So that's why you might be overly negative to protect your personal, maybe subconscious investment into Wuthering Waves, right? So definitely somewhat subconscious too, right? You might be acknowledging that or not. So since I'm in a neutral position where I don't currently have a game that I'm playing that I enjoy of this type, I mean, Nika is so different that I wouldn't even compare it. But the loading times in Nika are so shit. Holy fucking shit. If I play this game, I can have the loading times of Nika in an entire PlayStation of one loading screen. But they're so much better. And yeah, actually Nika really has a problem there. But what I'm saying is basically I'm coming from a neutral position where I don't have to argue against it. So I wanna like the game, because obviously when I start playing games, I always want to like them. I don't want to waste my time. But I came in with a neutral, positive sentiment, with the knowledge of negative because of censorship, it being Hoyoverse, whatever. Right? I was like negatively biased actually going into it, but I was like positively biased that I want to play such a game. So right, there's like this duality. So I came in kind of neutral, I guess. Right? It was very, very neutral and ready to either dislike or like it, depending on what happens. Still, I am right. It could become terrible later on, but for now, it looks very, very enjoyable to me. Just hits like the spot for me personally.
Right? It's not that it's bad. Like it's a 6, right? And a 6 is a really good number. 6.
6 is a really good number. In German, it's Sex, and it means the same as having sex in German, right? Ich habe Sex, die Zahl 6. Both are written differently. One is with X, one is CH. But it's a good number, right? 69 involves basically a 6 and an inverted 6. So a very good number. But from perspective of rating games, 6 is really mid, right? It's mid and barely enjoyable. Yeah. Want to see what I want to see what 6 is. I mean, we could look at 6 games, right? But they're quality wise usually. This game is not a 6, right? The first impression might be a 6 for some, for sure. But this game is a 6. Is wrong, first of all, because he knows only the start. The start of the game is a 6. But he's saying this game is a 6. Like he's like completely sure the game will forever be the same. He might be right about that. No idea, right? For him, it could remain a 6 the entire time. But the reasons for why it is a 6 for him are really stupid, in my opinion. Because, I mean, sure, it is his 6, but it's really stupid for other people because he's comparing it to different types of games, which is really dumb. Compared to open world games and whatever, it's really stupid. And then also he didn't understand shit about the game. And also he's talking about it like he played the entire game, which is the most egregious thing in this video, is basically talking about the start of the game with limited knowledge, like you know everything about the game, right? So I think it's really, really L-take, right? He's doing a first impression review score, which is IGN sometimes does too, right? And people usually shit on them for doing it. And I think it's like basically, just wait. Scores are meaningless anyway. And on a 1 to 10 scale, 6 is above average. In video games, average is probably 7 or 8, right? 7.5 maybe. So a 6 is already way below average. If you consider the scale almost never goes down to 5 out of 10, right? So really, really weird takes here today, especially for someone that does so much reaction content and should know all these things by heart and not even think about them, honestly.
6 is a great number, but I think that if you compare it to like the other 2 titles that they have, right? Like you look at Genshin and Star Rail.
Genshin, open world exploration game with kind of similar combat system. If you look at it from a completely moronic system, it's like comparing Doom Eternal with Counter-Strike. Both are FPS, I guess. That's basically what you get here. So yeah, kind of a dumb take there already. And then Honkai Star Rail, which is JRPG, right? With like semi-open worldish, not even like big area focused exploration, but quite linear and more like Final Fantasy, maybe the one non-open world type games, and definitely a JRPG. So both completely different games, first of all. So the comparison here already from the game type is very different. But then obviously you can still like or dislike them more. Now he's gonna rank them.
This game is like a distant 3rd place.
See, he's calling it distant 3rd place. I mean, what can I say? Someone that enjoys the auto combat and Honkai Star Rail more, all the power to you, man. All the power to you, right? If you can bear with a game that has an auto system that is not like core design, part of the design philosophy, because I love auto battles, right? Don't get me wrong. But the reason why they're enjoyable is because there's a meaningful decision making between the battles. And honestly, Honkai Star Rail's team building just doesn't have it. I'm sorry, just it's not deep enough for me to care about the auto system. So yeah, I guess if you enjoy that, obviously, how can I argue, right? It's personal preference at this point. This is like he can see whatever he wants, but literally he didn't play this game, he didn't understand this game, so he knows way more about Genshin and Honkai Star Rail. I guess he doesn't. I don't know how much he actually played Genshin. He seems to be playing Honkai Star Rail these off time and doing the dailies and whatever. I mean, someone that can actually do the dailies in Honkai Star Rail, for me, his opinion is almost immediately devalued because I don't give a shit, right? If someone that can do something so boring, I just can't, right? For me, this is impossible because it's like Honkai Star Rail. I mean, I play Nikke, right, where it's like full auto. And I do that while watching something else. I literally don't play Nikke. I don't say I play Nikke. I should say I click UI elements in Nikke, right, and get like cute waifu images or whatever, right? That's what Nikke is for me. But Honkai Star Rail basically is the worst version of that, where I literally have to move my character in between, and it's just so terrible, right? And playing it yourself just feels bad because auto is so efficient mostly. Yeah, it just has this problem, right? Honkai Star Rail could have been a really cool game, I think, if they just didn't do the auto mode. And the reason why they have autos, obviously, autos always when it comes to repetitiveness. I talked about repetitiveness. The only reason why Honkai Star Rail is on auto mode is because combat is highly repetitive, like literally highly repetitive. And it's not even real-time skill-based. And that's a real problem, right? As soon as you go away from real-time, I already argued the argument when we went into the forest, right? And did the adventure. Like having a non-real-time combat system is basically like telling the story instead of really reliving it. It is already inherently more repetitive in most cases. So yeah, how can I argue with someone saying this, right?
Very, very distant third place. Like it's not even, in my opinion, remotely close.
In chat, 6 is mid as fuck. Okay.
I'm not sure if you guys.
I don't even know what this is. Okay, this is basically my take on the video. Asmongold, I'm sorry, I expect more of you. You can obviously, it's your opinion. You're free to voice your opinion. However you choose, you can be as unuseful for the majority of players, or you can be as useful as you want to. You can do titles which are literally wrong because you're judging the entirety of the game from a wording perspective instead of just saying you don't like the start and whatever. You can do all of those things, but I will criticize you for that. I just had to. I just couldn't take this one. I usually don't mind a few L takes, which is completely normal. Humans have those. But having a complete video of almost entirely L takes is like not what you usually do, man. You're such a smart person, right? Such a smart person. And I don't know why sometimes the most intelligent of us fail miserably at presenting information in a meaningful way. I don't know why it is, but yeah, that's, I guess I have an unfortunate perspective. So I can't just go in and say, yeah, Asmongold usually is right. Yeah, I get his point. Yeah, he's always right. He must be right now, right? I'm literally someone that likes Asmongold and thinks very highly of him. So that's coming from a very positively biased perspective. So this is why I did the video, because I was like very disappointed in especially the delivery of his information and like the transparency, right? It's like if you have like news outlets, you want to have them like, tell them the details, right? You want to know, did they finish the game? You actually assume it for video games. You want to know, are they affiliated in any way? What is the real reasoning? What are they comparing? Right? They just want to have the full information and citation. It's like the scientific method, basically. I know, obviously, Asmongold is not a man of science and engineering, but he is intelligent enough to could be potentially, right? And I guess he was more like into socio-economic stuff these days. But in general, I think like it's very important to actually have these distinctions there and to really be clear about it if you want to be useful to your viewers, right? Which you mostly are, I think. I think Asmongold is a nice filter. I mean, way better filter than the average reaction streamer. There's such terrible reaction streamers which is just have non-stop L takes. I think Asmongold is usually a very much W take on a lot of topics and has like nice perspectives, a quick thinker, right? In this video, I just think like he completely dropped the ball and is doing us and the game a disservice as a result. Fuck the game, actually. It's just doing us a disservice by maybe preventing us from enjoying something we could have enjoyed if we are among the people that don't know about the game, right? I'm just coming from the perspective of someone that doesn't have... I could have seen this video and it would have been, oh yeah, sounds good, right? Yeah, Asmongold usually has a good take. I mean, if he says the game it doesn't have complex combat systems, he's probably right? And I would have nodded, right? It would have been, oh yeah, sure, because I'm biased, right? I'm a human being, like a social human being that is like prone to being biased, obviously. But the fact that I had the knowledge coming in really made this video like show me that this is not the quality I want to see about topics I don't know about, right? There's going to be a game one day I don't know shit about. I want to get information about. I don't want to have these like very, very one-sided bad takes on this game from someone I usually trust from an information perspective. And I don't trust, right? I just usually think he has good takes, right? So I think the average is really important, that it is that you have a high hit rate for someone to be useful as an information source. Because if someone's like right 50% of the time, it's basically gambling on the opinion of the person. But if you know the person is usually kind of right, you can at least use it as a starting point, right? And sometimes that might already be enough to just dissuade you from even trying to get more information, which this video would have done, honestly. This video sounds terrible, right? This video sounds like the game is terrible, which is, it 100% isn't, right? It's definitely a good game, maybe not amazing, whatever, but yeah. Okay, so this is basically my first reaction video ever. I'm going to take a little break here, and then we're going to play a little bit of that later. Also going to look at a little bit of game news, what's going on today, whatever. But I'm not a reaction content creator, and I'm also not an Asmongold hater. I like the guy. I'm also not a Zenless Zero fanboy. I'm especially not a MiHoYo or a HoYoverse fanboy, because I mean, obviously some things are like, because they're like regulated by the CCP, obviously, like censorship, but also the way they treated Genshin has nothing to do with that. And I think like me being a very negative person about the company making the game and being very positive about the game without having any affiliation whatsoever should definitely show you that my opinion is kind of quote unquote, nothing is unbiased, but more unbiased, right? So this is my take, right? And I really, really hope someone at least had a little bit of a new take on what Asmongold said, and I hope I could kind of help you guys. And not even help, right? Maybe even you can use my points to... I mean, my points are useful because they can actually prove to you that he's right about something you care about. If you care about the open worlds from Genshin, for example, I've iterated that fact over and over, but you can actually get the information out of me that it literally is not that game. So I'm telling you, if you are like Asmongold and you care about that so much that you can't enjoy anything else, bam, there you go. You know it now, right? I reinforced Asmongold's because I literally like I steel manned what he thinks, right? So I could be wrong about those things because it's like cut, whatever, right? I only know what I know, right? But I think even then my takes would actually help you to know if what he's saying is relevant to you, right? The short-term information, basically. At least you are aware now the tutorialization is kind of not that great, and you might have to look into how to play the game before you play it, actually. But so you can enjoy it to the most, because both people, the guy he reacted to, right? The guy who reacted, we didn't talk about him too much. I think he has like mid takes, right? He has like, sometimes he hits, sometimes he misses. He's like a bit all over the place, but in general, I think he's arguing way more in good faith than actually Asmongold in this video. So I think like the video definitely is like in an okay place when it comes to takes in my perspective. Although he also kind of didn't seem to understand the combat system, which is okay because the game actually doesn't really tutorialize it correctly, which is a big flaw it has and really needs to fix, right? But does it need to fix a lot? Like Asmongold was saying, no. This game is exactly what it wants to be, and it needs to just get better at what it delivers to the player at the start, so they know what they're getting. Did we just talk like almost 3.5 hours after over a 15-minute video? I know that Asmongold takes a 20-minute video, makes a 1-hour video out of it, but actually making a 3.5 hours video out of a 40-minute video must be the most stupid reaction video ever. So sorry for making it so long. just watch it at double speed or something. I don't know. Then it's even like 1.5 hours. So yeah, maybe take it as an inception point of your own critical thinking when it comes, I guess, to content. Also mine, by the way. You are free to disagree with everything I say, and obviously I'm like arguing against one of the most beloved, biggest streamers out there. I mean, obviously if you're big, you also have a lot of haters, but you also have a lot of fans. So obviously I'm gonna get shit on from at least one person or so. That's perfectly fine. I can take it. And obviously I'm not infallible, everyone's like voicing their opinions on a matter they have limited knowledge on. And I'm just like on the side of actually really, admitting the limitations of my knowledge and not shitting on games for no reason. Okay, but as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later for more ZZZ, I think. And let's see what other games are out there, right? I'm a variety gamer. I don't do like gacha games mostly on stream, actually. It's usually normal games. Yeah, I'm just like a normal variety streamer usually. Yeah. No, there's no doubt, obviously, that Asmongold obviously is way more successful than me. And also, because a lot of people like to argue, oh, you're just jealous, he's so successful, whatever. No, I have a very good life, right? I have a very loving family, girlfriend, and friends. And I also don't have financial problems at all, right? I have a very, very blessed life. So, for me, the success here is pretty irrelevant. I just like to, put my voice out there, a voice of reason sometimes. And that's what I like to do. And nobody sees it, whatever, right? It's like, obviously it would be nice, but I'm never gonna, argue against someone in bad faith because it's more, known than me, right? And also more entertaining. There's no doubt. I think that Asmongold has a way of delivering information that is often like hinging on, being entertaining, which is good because he's an entertainer, right? Let's not be delusional here. Most content creators, even the React streamers, are mostly entertainers and not really critical thinkers and engineers or scientists that try to dissolve things. I mean, there might be people like Unimachine, or you could almost argue that are like scientifically analyzing and doing whatever. There's obvious like people like that, but in general, it's like about having fun and spending a good time. And don't forget that when you listen to opinions from these people, because also me, because we're like, I mean, I'm engineer and scientist, but that doesn't mean shit, right? It just literally means I maybe have some background knowledge they might not have, but you're usually taking advice and information from people that can sometimes have bad takes, and you should always be ready to challenge opinions and make your own opinions, especially when it's a free-to-play game. And honestly, even investing 5 hours into a free-to-play game, whatever, fuck it, right? 5 hours, then you can laugh about it and say it's shit, right? It's free to play. Just try it out yourself, and definitely look out for the bad tutorializations, etc. Though, if you really want to have fun, my advice basically is parry shit, look for the golden glow, parry it, dodge, and stun the enemy and fuck them. Yeah, I think then you're gonna have way more time if you like really dominate the enemy, no matter what your HP is. Because obviously, if you almost don't get hit, what does the damage matter, right? You always parry everything and always dodge all the attacks. They could do infinitely more damage. It just means like someone that already plays like that wouldn't have a difference, right? That's why when I play Souls games, it doesn't matter if the enemy does a lot of damage or not. I'm always trying to dodge. I'm never face tanking, right? I mean, almost never. And so that's why my playstyle was good for the DLC, because I was already not face tanking. So who cares if they hit me for half HP or if they hit me for like 1/5 of my HP, right? Yeah, so I think that if you play it correctly, it doesn't really matter, right? You can pretend the enemy does a lot of damage, but most people won't get the tutorialization effect if they don't. So they do need to fix a little bit about that. And yeah, I think there's more showing the player how to do it than actually punishing them for not doing it. I think could be the way here. But okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.